Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching the second part of What If Naruto has light release. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
2 months later, we discover our blonde hero poring over his third book stack. While 1,000 more clones read another set of learning materials, he was conditioning his body in the Hyuuga dojo because he switched from gravity bands, which were becoming too small for his arms, to body conditioning bands a week ago. The original was having trouble moving the day after the council event. Hiyashi gave him these as a birthday present, but he had to wait for them to be fitted with the storage seals he had grown accustomed to. Rewind: the ruthless sun compelled Naruto to return from the realm of dreams, forcing his eyelids to open. With a strong yawn, he stretched his numbed hands and scratched his sweaty skin as he looked around the room. The boy then made a motion to stand up, drawing notice from the neighborhood outside his room through the paper that covered the walls of the traditional Japanese house. A womanly figure emerged, and there was a gentle knock on the door's wooden frame. A privacy seal could have easily prevented this, but he would typically feel safer without it. "Yes," said the blonde. "Can I come in, Naruto-kun?" the gentle female voice said. With a smile, Naruto said, "Enter, Yuki-san." When Hyuga Yukihime reached into the boy's room, the door softly slid open to let her enter and closed gracefully. Then she knelt next to his bed, looking like a Japanese woman, saying, "I may be inexperienced, but please take care of me." To her fiancé on the night of their engagement, this event surprised Naruto. Normally, the woman would assist him with his morning routine, which included cleaning his room and getting dressed, but she never did this. Yuki asked a question before he could inquire as to what was wrong. She grinned and said, "Naruto-kun, no, Naruto-sama, may I overstep my boundary as your attendant just for today?" The boy cringed a little because he had never liked the designation Sama. Everyone else he, yet, knew who was addressed with that suffix, with the exception of Hiruzen, Hiyashi, and the deceased Hokages, were total jerks. The woman giggled as he practically ordered the first part, "Except calling Mizuma, of course you can, Yuki-san." "Understood." Well then, her final words caused Naruto to look bewildered before his face heated up from the blood rushing to highlight his nervousness. She then pounced on the boy, planting 2 gentle lips on his sensitive whiskered cheeks and holding them there for what felt like an eternity. After some time, she eventually took her face away from his, wearing a stunning smile that seemed to exude happiness. "What was that?" inquired the boy. "That, Naruto-kun, was your first birthday present as well as a token of my gratefulness." She cracked a smile. "Present? Thank you. But, really, what was it?" he asked, feeling a little ashamed. Yuki was so taken aback by this that her smile was ruined and she frowned. Naruto saw this right away. The blonde buried his chin in his clothes while continuing to look at the woman. Did I upset you just now? I have seen parents and other people do it in the park sometimes, but they always go away before I get close to hear what they call it," he said. In order to calm the boy down, Yuki smiled right away after realizing what had happened, but she was still depressed inside. "I forgot that Naruto-kun never had anyone kiss him or even tell him that they love him," she said. "No you didn't, Naruto-kun. I was just surprised. It's called a kiss, and as a show of affection or love, and you usually do it because you either love somebody like a girlfriend, parent or somebody close to you, or that you care for that person and want to express it," she clarified. After hearing Yuki's words, the boy grinned and asked, "So what was it this time?" She said without hesitation, "Both," and Naruto gave her a startled but unconcerned look. "Hiyashi-sama called us today to tell us that the sealing will be stopped from this day forward and that all the use of the seal has been forbidden in all but self-defense. That means that if we do not attack the main house, they will not use the seal on us." She was almost jumping with excitement. She gave Naruto a tender embrace from the bottom of her heart and said, "We also heard from Hizashi-sama that you are the one we have to thank." The blonde chirped, "No problem, I'm just glad that you guys are happy." As Yuki prepared him for his birthday party, he giggled a little, and it was quite the celebration. Along with Hiruzen, Hiyashi, and his immediate family, almost every branch member came to wish him a happy birthday and bring him gifts among many other things. He received books, candy, a couple of children's safe practice shinobi gear, and about 20 new robes made of the finest silk. However, the gifts from the later individuals were the ones he cherished the most. He received a homemade birthday cake from Haruko and Hinata, a framed photo of his parents together with a scroll describing their lives, and a drawing by Hanabi in which he defeated a monster while she was a princess and he was a knight. Conversely, Hiyashi provided him with something useful. The man got him a pair of stronger bands that resembled Hinata's. After noticing that the ones on his wrists and ankles were getting smaller, he asked if they could get the same storage seals on the wrist ones. Even though he was thrilled with the gift, Hiyashi sent them to be changed after agreeing. A large 10-liter bottle of sweet sake was poofed out after some teenage shinobi branch members pulled the boy aside and removed a storage seal, giving them all the time of their lives. In the hopes that Naruto would become inebriated and perform well for them, they all began drinking. The boy wasn't even drunk when they passed out from the alcohol. Since alcohol is poisonous, the Ranpu chakra would simply negate it, and Kurama's energy would energize his body, strengthening it. Then, feeling very fresh, he joined the party, but he approached Haruko too closely, and Haruko smelled the substance emanating from the boy. He told her as if nothing was wrong when he was questioned about it. Grinning, she went back to the party and pursued the group that was just waking up. At the entrance to the alley, made up of 2 Hyuuga houses, they then noticed and sensed Haruko's presence. Nobody knows what happened next because, aside from the loud screaming and beating, all that was audible was a teenager attempting to crawl out of the situation only to be pulled back by a shadowy, clawed hand that was large enough to clench around his arms and torso. Then, a beaming Haruko emerged from there, dusting her kimono and hands. Flashback ends by creating thousands of chakra wires between the body's joints. These new bands could now be mentally deactivated, preventing his growth and gravity from being affected. Depending on how the boy moved, they would either stiffen or tension, effectively impeding all of his movements. With the bands still on, he was performing handstand push-ups while completely nude. It felt like he was swimming through liquid metal, or mercury, with each move encountering an increasing amount of resistance based on the power applied. The dojo doors then slid open, revealing Yuki, who was observing the boy's well-defined arms and torso while also grinning at him. When he grows up, he's going to be a real lady killer. She chuckled quietly at her own thoughts. Naruto-kun, Lady Haruko says that we will be leaving in an hour. I suggest that you end your training now and get ready, she stated to him. Naruto nodded as he gave her a look. He threw himself into the air with a last push, flipping and landing in a way that would make an Olympic gymnast green with envy. Yuki cheered at the performance, and Naruto made a flamboyant bow before heading out to prepare to leave. After 30 minutes, Naruto showed up wearing his bands and a fresh set of travel attire. Wearing a tight, black, short-sleeved Chinese vest with shoulder guards made of hardened leather, he was adorned with an orange oriental dragon that seemed to be coiling around his torso. The dragon's head stopped between his shoulder blades, and it had a red cat-like eye in its mouth that looked like Kurama's. He was wearing dark blue leggings, each with 9 orange fox-like tails adorning his pockets. His thin, sleeveless, light orange trench coat, which only closed on his torso and featured the red and black Uzumaki clan spiral in the center of the Hyuuga flame, was worn on top. It resembled Ichigo Kurisaki's Bankai outfit, but it had a high collar, a zipper, and a hood that could be hidden inside a collar pocket. With Yuki's assistance, he made this uniform himself. When he had finished learning the Fuinjutsu books he had borrowed from the library, he was particularly proud of the seals he had made on them. Its main feature was a barrier seal that could store chakra and release it on command to form a strong and flexible shield around the clothing like a second skin. Each article of clothing also had a temperature management system that kept the clothes heated or cooled according to your preferences, as well as a restoration seal that could repair and even grow the clothes as long as you first sealed workable material inside of it. Although he wanted to make it self-activating, he couldn't do it at his level. He had been pouring his chakra into them for the past week, and he was now able to use 3 rank jutsu before it failed. The boy patiently awaited the completion of packing by the other members of the travel group. He kept everything he found useful in 3 storage seals he made himself after a lot of trial and error, or in his wrists. Hiyashi emerged with Yuki, 15 branch member guards, and his immediate family 5 minutes prior to the deadline. All of them were dressed in more travel-friendly robes, and the girls wore light chainmail underneath for added security. They departed for the fire capital after Haruko motioned them to board the carriage. With the exception of lunch, which was always eventful with the boy, the trip went smoothly, and later that day they reached their destination. Naruto was so overcome by the new sights and smells that he activated Shinsogen and Sojin Seishin to take in as much of the scene as he could from inside the carriage. After a few minutes, and half his chakra reserves, he had a decent idea of how at least half the city was laid out, with a massive mansion in the center that resembled a castle. The boy had a suspicion that the fire daimyo, his family, and his group lived there until they arrived at the hospital. He kept scanning the area, but this time without his powers. Haruko grinned and said, "Honey, I can take care of myself from here on. Why don't you go check us in at the hotel?" Her husband appeared hesitant to comply. Not until Naruto created a clone did she persuade the Hyuuga head to believe her. She went on, "Don't worry so much, I feel fine and these are the best doctors in the land, so nothing will happen to me. Besides, I'm sure that the kids will like a little sightseeing before we go back home, and it will take a while before I'm done with the checkup." By declaring, Kaoru-san and I will take care of her Hiyashi-sama. The clone Naruto finally allayed the man's concerns and provided the girl with happiness. They proceeded with their plans. Leaving half of the guard contingent with the patient, they arranged the rooms after checking into the hotel while the guards were given their own room. Hiyashi and his family were given a 2-bedroom room, and Naruto was given a similar room to share with Yuki, who was more than happy with the arrangement. They left after a brief meal to explore the capital of their cherished country. And by history, I mean the market district, where Hiyashi felt a little uncomfortable. At least 2 adult bodyguards accompanied each child as they inspected every stall in the district since the older sister enjoyed making clothes. Hinata and Hanabi visited the different booths selling clothing and materials after pleading with the woman to allow her to do so. She actually created the tail designs on Naruto's pants with Yuki's assistance. It turned out that she was naturally gifted in home economics. In contrast, Naruto was a man, or boy, on a mission. He was having so much fun that he made it his mission to visit every ramen shop within a mile, that is, until he arrived at a hill that was adorned with a few trees and a great many stairs. The sight of the peaceful-looking piece of earth captivated him, but he was startled out of his reverie by a hand on his back. Isamu remarked, "Impressive, isn't it, Naruto-sama?" "What is it?" inquired the boy. The boy nodded when the man said, "It is the capital fire temple. It is a section of the main fire temple and the place where the citizens and wandering monks come to rest and meditate." "Okay, but quickly. We don't have much time left and Hiyashi-sama wants to visit the fire museum." As they ascended the stairs, they were confronted by a plain, bald Buddhist monk who was cleaning the entryway. He grinned and said, "Hello." The blonde and the Hyuga bowed together and exclaimed, "Greetings, together." The monk inquired, "Came for some sightseeing or for some enlightenment?" Naruto stood up before Isamu could respond. He returned the smile, saying, "The first part, but only a fool would refuse the second." He knew he would benefit from those logic books. The bald man grinned at the blonde and said, "Wise words, young one, where have you heard them?" "An open mind welcomes newcomers," he repeated, creating the phrase this time and getting the monk to laugh. As he motioned them to enter through the gate, the monk said, "Yes, enjoy the temple, but be careful. Some of these structures date back before the capital was established." Even though it was the end of January, the country's warm climate caused the sakura trees to bloom every season. And now they were in full bloom. The courtyard was lovely. They took a short stroll before going into the stone main hall with support columns on either side of the main path. It resembled a Western monastery rather than a temple, despite being enormous and simply decorated. The same distinctive combination applied to its accessories as well. Isamu said, "Naruto-sama, please wait here while I get our fortune slips." The boy nodded in agreement. The attention to detail was mind-numbing, so Naruto was happy to activate the Shinsogen while he was away to get a better view of the building. An image of the elements in perfect harmony with fire in the center was displayed on the ceiling. Even more astonishing was the fact that, despite its 20 square meter size, it was made of colored stones that were no larger than a rice grain. Some of the writing that adorned the walls was too old to read. The blonde's attention was drawn to one such spot. He saw that a stone block that made up a portion of that area had glowing white writing that appeared to have been written with leads when he used his Ranpu ability. Gently approaching the enigmatic appearance, he noticed that in addition to the complex symbols, there were 2 palm prints. One horizontal finger pointing at the first hand and one vertical finger pointing to the sky. With a whisper, "What's this?" the lines started to change as the writing responded to his breath, eventually settling on modern kanji. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto read, "Mayan, the child of light and darkness, rests here. She lies next to her guardians, waiting for a bloody kiss to wake her up from the one who crosses the edge of the shadow. O seer of dawn and twilight, would you dare to be the one to tell her your fate? Then let your soul free and your mind free as well. Touch the cold, lifeless stone with your palms, and feel the cold north and the lovely east. Burn your doubts about your future because you have been given the ability to read this message. The message of the ancients, by either brilliance or by nether location." With intense curiosity, Naruto read the words etched in stone until they were unintelligible. Even ancient power appears to be helpless against the fury of time. After giving it some thought, he touched the gleaming characters with his finger. The boy was startled when his hand slowly slid down and lightly brushed against an imprint that glowed. The words, "Reach out to the cold, lifeless stone and touch the beautiful east and the cold north with thy palms," faded back to their previous intensity as he removed his member. "Burn thy doubts" glowed even brighter, pointing to the next step. The words, "East and north, burn thy doubts," kept repeating in the blonde's mind until he used both hands to reach for the imprints and positioned them appropriately. A trap door opened beneath Naruto, who fell like a hole in one, and the words began dancing around the boy's hands like electrons in an atom before eventually vanishing. After a crazy ride to the end of an old giant slide, he slid into a room that resembled a cave and appeared to be at least 10 stories high based on the small amount of light that came through the bluish crystals on the wall. He regained his senses and shook his head. He turned on his shinsogen in the hopes of spotting a glimmer of light. Because the room was dark, he was surprised by what he saw. A very strong barrier encircled a sword on the opposite side of a room. He wasn't sure, but it appeared that the barrier was made of chakra. However, it wasn't the most unexpected thing. The most unexpected thing, however, was that the sword, which resembled a dado and was as large as he was, a Japanese longsword, similar to Tensa Zangetsu from Bleach, was actually the one that was radiating the barrier. Its center appeared to be a light bulb. He took a step in that direction, unsure of what to do, and as soon as his foot touched the ground, the elaborate patterns on the walls began to glow in a silvery white hue that would eventually converge behind the sword. Details of the weapon were now visible. A single piece of pure white marble that seemed to flow inside its edges like a raging storm was used to make its blade. It had a white handle as well, but it didn't flow. Instead, it was wrapped in golden silk. The golden round handle featured engravings of the 9 biju, and the rim was shaped like feathers, giving the impression that it was a nest of feathers. The boy was looking around the room with curiosity and surprise when his eyelids suddenly flew up and his mouth opened, but it made no sound. Step by horribly exhausted step, he crept closer to his target as he made his way to the stand containing the weapon. 3 times his size, Naruto saw 2 carvings that resembled square columns with sculptures atop. One appeared to be a lion-like animal with short antlers resembling those of female deer and whiskers resembling those of catfish, while the other featured a falcon with wings spread wide and pointing skyward, along with feathers that resembled fire. It was positioned inside a similar column, but its middle had been slightly excavated to make room for the sword. On top of it was what appeared to be a lizard or dinosaur with wings, a horned head, and a spiky spine, with its flight appendages stretched open and its head pointing directly at the gap previously mentioned. The 2 carvings stood in line, each statue facing the other, and the gap between them pointed at the sword. As the boy edged closer to the sword, this statue caught his attention the most. A seal formula appeared on the ground about halfway between the sword and the first 2 carvings. Light glowed from it like a lightning bolt, carrying smoke with it, before it subsided. After raising his hands to shield his face, Naruto took them off to reveal a living, almost identical replica of the beast that the sword statue had portrayed. The only differences were that it was 5 times the boy's size, had shorter horns, and lacked the spikes on its back. In a deep voice, the creature roared, "How many centuries has it been since the dawn of the age of man? How many cycles have passed since the Beast King was defeated by the Sage of Six Path?" Before turning to face the terrified young boy who shuddered at its feet. "A child?" it asked, astonished. "How did an inexperienced little boy like you get past the trial of the North? The cruel North is cold and for half its time dark, while a child should only be east, from where the sun rises. A hatchling is a reason for joy and brings warmth and light in anyone's life. Yet here I am, standing in Mayon's cave, a moment all the guardians have been waiting for since the age of the great sage, talking to you. Tell me, boy, who are you?" The creature's face approached Naruto and let him gaze into its eyes to calm him down. Naruto could see that there was no malice in his eyes, only the warmth of his cherished family and grandfather figure kept his sanity intact as the cold, hateful glares almost froze his innocent heart. However, not a shred of that was displayed by this being. No. The gleam in its golden slit eyes was pure curiosity. Naruto responded after releasing the breath he had held since the creature's initial words. He was confident enough to give the beast his entire name when he said, "Naruto, Naruto Namikaze Uzumaki. May I ask yours, and what are you?" "Polite and honest, even brave, I like you. My name is Fafnir the Dragon Prince, son of Hyuuga the Dragon King of Order and Tiamat the Dragon Queen of Chaos," he proudly replied. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise. "Dragon? As in the greatest of the 3 legendary guardian creatures said to protect the world from destruction?" The creature grinned and said, "Ah, for one of your age you show great knowledge. Indeed, it is how you said." The boy said, "Pardon my impoliteness, but what are you doing here?" "A reasonable question, seeing that my kind have not been seen in centuries in the human world, but indulge me first by answering the same question," replied Fafnir. "Well, at first I read the words on the wall, and when I placed my hands on the imprints I fell through some kind of trapdoor," replied Naruto. The dragon grinned, if it could be called that, and said, "The trials of North and East, so it seems that you truly are the one chosen to lead the guardians to greatness." Fafnir looked at the blonde in surprise as Naruto said, "Please wait, there is more. After I recovered from the slide I used a technique to try to see in the dark, and then I saw the sword behind you had a shiny ball Inside, that looked a little like how a heart shows when I used the technique. I then moved closer, wanting to pick it up to look at it. Naruto took a breath and allowed Fafnir to get involved. Ah yes. That sword is called Mayan, and I'm surprised you could see its core. This sword was formed from a claw of the great beast by the Sage of Six Paths and given life using his own technique, making it indestructible. This is a rare sentient sword, the one with the most potential since her power grows with its masters, the dragon clarified. Surprised, Naruto said, the Jubi? Yet again you surprise me with your knowledge. Indeed, it is such, but the weapon cannot leave the pedestal except in the hands of the chosen of light and darkness. Only one that walks on both worlds can breach its own defenses, Fafnir clarified. I see, no wonder it's so sad, Naruto exclaimed, his face slipping into a profound state of grief. The dragon was caught off guard and asked, what? The boy grasped his chest and exclaimed, I can hear her in my mind and, in my heart. Looking at the blade, the blonde exclaimed, she is crying, of loneliness. She just wants a friend, she said. The beast moved aside to give the boy room to reach the sword. You can hear her? Then you must be the one. Please, don't let me stop you. Go. Go and give her the friend that she needs, the beast said. Then he raised his arm and gazed at the barrier. The boy briefly withdrew his hand as he said, just so you know, child, if you are not the one, that barrier will remove you from existence. However, after hearing Mayan's cries again, he regained his resolve and thrust his arm forward, making contact with the wall of energy. Bolts of golden lightning erupted from the point of contact at that precise moment, growing brighter by the second until the intensity was so great that even Fafnir had to turn away to avoid going blind. After a stray bolt struck him in the forehead, the boy gained the wisdom of a dragon, and Fafnir learned new things about the world. Naruto loves to read history, and the boy's life as Naruto remembers it, even though it did not harm the dragon. Just as it started, it abruptly stopped, exposing a slightly disheveled Naruto clutching Mayan by the handle and pressing the edge against his forehead, causing some blood to trickle out. With his eyes still closed, the boy whispered, it's okay now, Mayan-chan, I promise I'll be your friend forever. And awakened with a bloody kiss, as blood trickled down his forehead and down the sword. Naruto turned to Fafnir and was taken aback by what he saw, grinning and giggling a little. The dragon had a respectful expression on his face as he bowed his head to the boy. Do not be surprised, young one. When you broke Mayan's barrier, our minds linked. You will find that you now have centuries of my knowledge as I have your memories. And I want to say I have never felt this degree of cold and loneliness, not even in the twisted dark places of the demonic nether from which my mother comes from, than I have in your first years, and yet you persevered and never gave in to the hate and even saved another soul from it, Kurama. For that you have my respect, and I ask you to become my brother, Fafnir told Naruto, who immediately burst into the thought of becoming a brother and scowled. The dragon laughed and then said, then let it be known that from this moment onwards that Naruto Namikaze Uzumaki is the brother of Fafnir and a prince of dragons. All dragons beneath me are yours to command, and should you need my aid, just summon me and I will not refuse. The boy said, how do I summon you? With a smile, the dragon lightly pounded his tail into the earth. 3 scrolls are revealed when the columns split open. These are the Guardian's summoning scrolls, brother. You are the first human to ever hold them. Sign your name in blood on the dragon contract and any dragon will be yours to call upon. The Guardians need no hand signs to be summoned, but to make them truly yours you must gain the respect of the highest summons. In the dragon's case, it is my mother Tiamat, the Chaos Dragon, though if it's you I'm sure she will love you like one of her hatchlings. Can I sign all the contracts? Naruto asked Fafnir after signing the scroll. Yes, you can. The Guardians have no quarrels among themselves, but I think that you would find a single summon group enough for any needs, so, unless for sentimental values, you shouldn't sign another, Fafnir clarified. After that, Naruto seized the scrolls and encased them in his wristbands. The boy thought aloud, well, it was fun and all brother, but how do I get out of here? When Fafnir said, stab the pedestal you are standing on with Mayan. And goodbye, brother. He vanished. Then Naruto followed instructions. The stone then broke open, and he fell down another chute and landed in a small yard inside the water fountain at the foot of the temple hill. The boy immediately dried himself after exiting the water and turning on the self-clean seals. He pondered what to do with the sword, but Mayan gave him a flurry of information that filled him in on every detail of her. Then, as the sword vanished from view, Naruto relaxed and grinned. She seems to have been soulbound to the blonde, meaning she could live inside his heart and be called back at will. Additionally, she taught the boy Kenjutsu techniques straight from the source. The boy then exhaled in relief, but the sound of a furious Hiyashi soon roused him from his reverie. The Hyuga head roared, Isamu, how could you let him out of your sight? Isamu attempted to defend himself, Even though his voice was worried, Hiyashi-sama, I only left him alone for a minute and he was 15 feet behind me, they said. His warning caused the boy to snicker slightly. You better pray that we find him before Haruko finds out, or what she will do to us will make the cage seal activation feel like a light headache, he said after briefly turning off his ankle bands. He bounded toward the 6-foot-tall fence that separated them and cleared them with plenty of space. Then he landed behind Isamu, who turned to face the smiling boy with a pale, scared expression. He screamed, Naruto-sama, and ran toward the child, pausing briefly in front of the blonde. Where have you been? We've been worried sick about you, he yelled. The boy started to say, it's a long story but was cut off by a loud growl that sounded like a furious animal during mating season. Isamu leapt into his position, Byakugan ablaze, and exclaimed, what was that? When the man's face faltered, the boy smirked and buried his head a foot into the ground before pulling it out like an ostrich. That was my stomach, I'm hungry, he said. Hiyashi greeted them with a laugh and gestured for them to go to the hotel so they could meet the rest of the family and hear the boy's story. When they arrived at the hotel, Haruko and the others welcomed them and apologized for their tardiness. Naruto accused the tourist traps of capturing him. He described how he discovered the sword that liked him but concealed the summoning scrolls. He attributed it to his newfound dragon wisdom, but he had no idea why secrecy was necessary. Yuki inquired, so what does this sword do? As Naruto materialized Mayan, the people in attendance gaped in wonder at its surreal beauty. Well, I haven't figured that one out yet, except for the fact that it's supposed to be indestructible and is now a part of me. Kair, beautiful, was a simultaneous cry from Hanabi and Hinata when the older sister asked, can I look at it? Of course Hinata-chan, he said with a smile as he gave the girl Mayan. As soon as Hinata touched the blade, a warm current shot through her, causing her to pull her hand back in surprise. When Naruto saw this, he realized what was going on. Mayan-chan is a sentient sword and is a part of me. She knows who are my precious people and will treat them accordingly. It will not cut people who I want to protect, he grinned. Hinata reached for the sword once more and held it with greater assurance, enjoying the serenity and comfort it provided. She said, nice to meet you, Mayan-san. I am Hinata Hyuga. But felt a shock, similar to the spark that a cigarette lighter's quartz generator produces when it comes into contact with your skin. She shuddered slightly, but the action took her by surprise once more. Naruto chuckled and said, not Mayan-san but Mayan-chan. He went on to say, for a centuries-old sword she sure is conscious about her age. Naruto laughed even harder as the white, stormy substance that was her blade started to turn redder from the hilt to the tip as Hanabi admired Mayan and Hinata attempted to comfort the poor sword, he exclaimed. And now she's blushing. And laughed even harder, causing the adults to join the boy. The following morning, Naruto is seen practicing the sword skills he learned and the other information Mayan gave him when he landed in the fountain in the hotel's backyard. He quickly gained their favor before coming up with the concept of fusing the unnamed sword stances and strikes with the Juken and Ryusei. Given that he maintained the taijutsu styles of defense and adopted the weaponry of his newly formed Kurohi no Ryu, black light, black fire style, he was making good progress. He had barely finished perfecting the fundamentals when he sensed a powerful presence a short distance behind him. He saw a man approach him wearing light samurai armor and exquisite purple-gray silk robes. The man's long, gray hair nearly reached his waist, and he had a long goatee, a mustache that was split in the middle, and bandages covering the top of his head. A simple but lovely sword was attached to his hip. Before returning to his training, Naruto made a small bow to the man and received a respectful nod, but the man interrupted him. Forgive me for asking this, but why is a child such as yourself so immersed in this deadly art? Replied the man. Naruto eyed the man from head to toe and said, pardon me, sir, but I don't know you well enough to share this information with you. I don't even know your name. He tried to look like a straightforward man brandishing a sword, but his small gestures and tenseness betrayed him to the youngster who had long since learned to recognize these subtle cues. The man looked like a formidable opponent even though he could never fully use it to the extent that Hinata and her naturally flexible body could. The blonde's Sojin-sation was activated, and he also tensed some muscles required for the Ryusei. At least it offered a covert defense. The man, who was now identified as Mifune, replied, ah, you are right. Where are my manners? My name is Mifune. The boy became more vigilant as a result, but he also felt less stressed. He was aware of this man and his legendary honor. The boy inquired, as in Mifune-sama, General of the Iron Country? Indeed. I find it surprising that one of your age knows about me in this country, replied Mifune. The blonde bowed, giving the man the respect he merited. Yeah. I get that a lot. I am Uzumaki Naruto of Konohagakure, she said. Mifune went on, "You still haven't answered my question." The boy then lifted Mayan and pointed it at the general, saying, "One strike. If you win I will answer your question." The boy's expression would have made Hiyashi proud. An answer can be difficult at times even though the question is simple. Mifune-sama. "You have your curiosity as I have mine. I will make a deal with you," they said. Even though the man didn't think the boy had a chance of even scratching his clothes, he felt compelled by honor to ask, "And if you win?" Naruto nodded slowly and closed his eyes, saying, "My prize is the match and that is all I desire." Mifune was taken aback by the mature Sao that was developing in front of him, since most kids would likely ask for a mountain of candy or a bag of gold, and some scum would ask for women and alcohol. It was honorable to view the match as a worthy prize. "Very well, but honor dictates me to tell you that I am a master of Iijutsu, drawing technique," the samurai said, bowing slightly. Naruto gave a nod and replied, "Thank you for the information. I do not yet grasp the full extent of a swordsman's code of honor, but in response to your actions I must say that I am your complete opposite in terms of sword techniques." Mifune said, "This I think will be interesting. Shall we begin?" And the boy nodded slowly and thoughtfully. The man then assumed his Iijutsu stance, leaning forward with his torso and placing the drawing hand on the sword's hilt and the other on the scabbard. He then gently pushed out the blade with his thumb. Honor required him to respond to the swordsboy's challenge, even though he really didn't want to get this serious with his 7-year-old. On the other hand, Naruto deactivated the bands and assumed a very peculiar position, with his feet in front of his right and his body standing straight up like a tree with the cutting edge facing away from the samurai. He was holding Mayan with both arms extended to his right in a straight line from the blade's tip to his shoulders. This boy, in Mifune's opinion, was either insane or an amateur experience told him that something was amiss, but he dismissed it, blaming it on food poisoning or something. His defense seemed almost non-existent, especially on his left side. He simply couldn't understand that a child with such a ridiculous attitude could be capable of anything other than humiliating himself or causing his own death. The gong was a leaf that had fallen off its branch and ended up in the center of the battle. As the leaf drew closer and closer to the ground, both swordsmen stiffened, and then clang! The sound of metal on metal reverberated through the dusty air, disrupted by the swordsman's rapid movements. Upon clearing the dust, we see a startled Mifune hunched forward with his sword partially drawn, a composed Naruto standing to his right, facing the man, and Mayan hovering just a hair's breadth away from the back of Mifune's neck. After that, Naruto pulled his sword away from the man's vitals, giving him back his place. Mifune humbly acknowledged, "I have lost," and accepted the lesson. "Only because you underestimated me. If you took me seriously you would have had time to draw the sword again and it would have been a tie," said Naruto. Flashback to the battle. Mifune charged at Naruto as soon as the leaf struck the ground, aiming a precise draw strike at the boy's ostensibly vulnerable left, intending to strike him with the sword's blunt side. A moment after the leaf fell and Mifune launched the attack, Naruto leapt to the left and spun clockwise, causing the general's blow to land on the back of his sword, increasing the boy's spin speed and bringing Mayan to the back of his neck just as he was getting ready for a second EI strike. However, the samurai were unaware that the blonde left that side exposed. Flashback ends. Maybe, but the battlefield does not take well to maybes and what ifs. It was a valuable lesson that I have learned today, and for that I thank you, as well as for sparing my life. Know that for as long as I shall remain in charge of my country you will always have a home there and you will forever have a friend of the sword," Mifune said. Naruto said, "You asked me before why I study the art. Since you are my friend, I will tell you now. It is to protect my precious ones and the ones that they hold dear. And for that I will become the next Hokage." His eyes were clear of any uncertainty or doubt. "I see. Then Kurosawa, his sword, and I truly do not regret losing to you and your sword." With Mayan in his arms, Naruto bowed and said, "Mayan and I accept your defeat and hope that we will fight again," as though he were giving the man something. He remarked, "Mayan, a fine name for a Mato, excellent, famous sword," without observing the red tint the sword was beginning to take on. "As is Kurosawa," said the boy after saying, "Well then I bid you farewell." The man bowed and walked away. Even though he was eager to return home and resume working with shadow clones, Naruto spent the rest of the morning before breakfast working on his Kurohi no Ryu. Naruto began his medical ninjutsu lessons 3 months after they got back from their trip, and boy, was it a rough ride. He found a teacher he could trust who wasn't a Kyuubi hater. Thanks to Sarutobi, in addition to some basic jutsu, he tested Naruto's medical knowledge and abilities, such as chakra control. To see his results, Naruto was now on his way to the Hokage Tower. He got there exactly when he was called, greeted the secretary, and went into the room where he saw 3 Hiruzuns. two on paperwork and one sitting in his seat, all of whom were conversing with a stunning woman who had dark blue eyes, long blonde hair, flawless curves, and a large chest. Her white outfit, which was neither too tight nor too loose, resembled a cross between a business suit and a tracksuit. She carried the Konoha Nin symbol close to her heart. The boy chirped, "Hello Hokage Gigi, Tomiko-sensei." "Ah Naruto-kun, welcome." Hiruzen had a smile. "Hello Naruto-kun," Tomiko exclaimed. Naruto exclaimed, "Well, how did I do?" which caused the two adults to chuckle. Hiruzen said sheepishly, sharp to the point, "Okay you, actually I think Tomiko should tell you." "Well Naruto-kun, as you know, last week's test was virtually unlimited as with what questions you could answer, and I have to say, you made me search for answers to some questions and even gave some answers that I tested together with my boss, and you improved medical procedures. All in all, I think knowledge alone and ingenuity could earn you an A rank first-class medical license. You are only lacking experience to earn an S rank." She laughed and the child raised his fists with joy but maintained his cool. "Your chakra control is also incredible considering how large are your reserves. I have never seen anyone have that much control since Lady Tsunade left when I was a trainee S rank at least." She kept extending the boy's smile. Her sigh caused the boy to frown. "As for the jutsu part, well, that is where the trouble starts," she said. "Considering your chakra's condition, I can say that I am stumped." "I mean Naruto-kun, please show your chakra scalpel to Hokage-sama," she requested, and Naruto agreed to do so. The boy raised his hand and began to gather yang chakra to form the technique, but his hand was colored with intense purple chakra that had vibrating edges that resembled barbs instead of the typical green. After that, Tomiko made one herself, but it appeared to be typical. As you can see, because of the Kyuubi, his chakra vibrates tens of thousands of times per second, making his scalpel more like a chakra chainsaw. This can be useful for battle, but in the operating room it would shred muscles and tendons instead of neatly cutting them. Also, these vibrations have an innate spiking ability, so while the quantity of chakra could be perfectly controlled, the potency can vary and cause tumors or chakra burns on a patient. Truth be told, I can't even rate this since it is a one-of-a-kind case. Tomiko breathed a sigh of relief but decided to give it a try. She chirped, "Well, no use crying over spilled milk," which caused both men to stare at her as if she were insane. "I mean, he is still growing and his chakra system may be formed, but it's nowhere near mature. Who knows? Perhaps in time it will stabilize, but no promises. In the meantime, I will teach Naruto-kun all that I know and figure something out later," she said with a blonde grin and a smile. Since he wouldn't have to notify Danzo of the boy if he increased his library clearance, Sarutobi granted her permission to take any medical scrolls and books from the shinobi library to instruct the boy. We discover the boy using a fish to practice his medical ninjutsu 4 months later. "Right, just like that Naruto-kun. Try to compensate for the chakra surges. Focus," Tomiko said. As he attempted to revive the aquatic creature, the blonde's hands were glowing a pale purple with green accents, even though his face appeared to be in some pain and sweat was streaming down his brow in buckets. He persisted in trying. The fish began to wriggle, giving the impression that he was succeeding, but then it burst into a million pieces. Naruto sighed after grunting. Tomiko tried to reassure the boy, but it didn't work. "Looks like it will be fish paste with salad tonight," she said later. She removed a second fish and placed it on the table. "Shall we try again?" she asked with a smile, leaning over the table, gripping the corners with his hands. Naruto grunted before shaking his head. Even though these practice sessions have given him even more control over his chakra, and he is now able to form microscopic needles from regular chakra, a feat that is thought to be extremely difficult but useless, he claimed. "No more for today. Trying to compensate for the spikes gave me a mild headache." The boy gently brushed her hand aside as she reached over to try to use jutsu to ease his pain, and then he took off his practice clothes, which were now covered in fish guts. A weak smile appeared on his face as another Naruto appeared. "I'm going to cool my head and wash these at the river. Fish number 134 made quite a mess, plus I need to recover a little bit of chakra since Shinsogen and Sojin Seishin take a lot out of me," he said. His sensei nodded as he said, "I gave him enough chakra for 2-3 fish. He will practice in my place." He started to head for the door, but he heard something first. "I did it, boss, look," came the clone's cry. When Naruto turned around, he saw the clone bouncing around in the fish, which had been still, becoming restless after dispelling the clone. The blonde observed from its memories that the clone's chakra vibrated thousands of times more slowly, making it easier to compensate for the boy's powerful control. Tomiko agreed to teach Naruto's clones after he explained the situation to her as an additional chakra control exercise. She then assisted the original in attempting to compensate his chakra. After gaining his medical license 2 months later, Naruto began working in the hospital and had nearly equaled Tsunade in terms of medical knowledge and chakra control. The only issue was that, despite being more experienced and knowledgeable than all of the mednin there, he was only able to obtain a 4th-class hospital license, which was the same as a rookie genin, due to his lack of experience and the Hokage's slight entreaties to keep his abilities a secret until he entered the academy. He was a glorified janitor nurse, that's all. He would change patients, clean bedpans, clean floors, and handle biologically hazardous materials. He was fortunate to be accepted under the guidance of Dr. Mamoru, who was among those who did not despise Naruto or the fox and who also consulted Hanabi that evening, because the majority of the doctors detested him. However, the man was still subject to regulations and could only allow Naruto to perform basic diagnostic jutsu or bandaging. The boy actually benefited from this since he was unable to use shadow clones in public, especially with the Anbu concealed outside the window. Naturally, Naruto was content with simply being able to do something, and ever since learning that the blonde was essentially a walking library because he had committed all of Konoha's medical knowledge to memory, Mamoru would frequently consult with the boy. Together, they developed new techniques and jutsu, and the man soon rose to the position of chief medic and hospital head. He also offered Naruto a promotion, but the boy turned him down, explaining to the good doctor that he needed to maintain a low profile and providing a privacy seal as justification. In spite of this, Mamoru accepted Naruto as his unofficial helper and even allowed the boy to help with some low-level tasks so the blonde could witness the clone team in action from anesthesiology to emergency procedures. The man believed that the experience was as close to flawless as possible. He made a self-promise to promote Naruto to 1st class immediately after he became a genin, regardless of the Shinigami's attempts to stop him. A few months later, we discover the boy getting up early to practice his morning routine. Why, you ask? Well, it was a busy day today on his first day at the Shinobi Academy. He was as excited as a child should be, especially since he would be in the same class as Sasuke and Hinata, even though he had already read through all of the instructional and educational materials, which were well beyond his years. Sasuke has been one of his best friends since the day they first met. Alongside Hinata, Naruto even taught him how to climb trees, walk on water, and use the Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. They also frequently engaged in combat. After persuading the duck-ass boy that the Uchiha head would disapprove of their friendship, he took the oath of secrecy and did this. In contrast, Sasuke relished the small amount of privacy he maintained from his father. After discovering weights in his clan's dust-covered storage house and realizing that no one was using them anymore, the boy even began wearing them in the same way that Naruto and Hinata did. Even a friendly rivalry was initiated between them. Naruto had a particular affection for his brother Itachi. The blonde saw how much he loved his younger brother Sasuke, and the icy-looking Uchiha didn't fool him in the least. Together, they had a great time. As the boy finished putting on his battle attire, Yuki called from behind the doors, "Naruto-kun, are you ready?" They were now called since his return. He has improved them with a chameleon seal that allows the user to instantly change the color of the clothing item to any color they choose or even a combination of colors. The blonde replied, "Yup," as he tossed his orange trench coat over his shoulders and gave Mickey a fond farewell pet while the snake hissed joyfully. 2 guards followed behind Naruto and Hinata as they exited the compound. Since being surrounded by a wall of milky white eyes tended to draw more attention than it was worth, the boy made the request on his own initiative. Sasuke and his brother, who are still dressed in canonical fashion, met them on the way, and since they were close enough to the academy to conceal their friendship, they formed a new group. They even got into a fight to finish the trick. Barely suppressing his laughter, Sasuke teased, "Huh? You want to be Hokage? Get real, idiot. There is no way a loudmouth like you can ever become one." Instead, Naruto, who was in no better position than Sasuke, replied, "Teme, what about you? Your clan is so great with your eyes that if a bug gets in one of them you start screaming like a baby. Oh no, my precious eyes. Help me. A bug is attacking me. How dare it mess with the Uchiha." Hinata, on the other hand, was having the worst time because she had to act like a mediator between them, but occasionally the lack of air she was holding back from laughing made her turn blue. She even covered her face with her hair because she had heard that Naruto likes girls with long hair. The girl had grown it to the middle of her shoulder blades. He may not, but I do. She wasn't a fangirl by any means because she worked out until she lost weight and burned off extra calories, so she didn't even consider dieting. However, she did make minor adjustments to her hair and clothes. Speaking of clothes, she was now wearing tight light cream shorts and a light purple dress with a tight turtleneck and no sleeves that ended at the mid-thigh. She also wore light shinobi sandals on her feet and a tighter, lighter version of her original series jacket without the fluff. She received some assistance from her mother and Kurenai Yuhi, who occasionally stopped by to talk to Haruko, in choosing the clothes. She was dressed in fishnet armor that was just above her knees and had no sleeves. Naruto fitted each of these items with the same seals the blonde wore on his clothing, with the exception of the fishnets and underwear overall. She was incredibly beautiful for an 8-year-old's standards, but the person she did it for didn't seem to care about her as a potential romantic partner. They waved goodbye to their guardians as soon as they arrived at the academy, and then they entered through the gate, Sasuke and Naruto, glaring at one another while Hinata, who didn't fall behind, tried desperately not to laugh at how talented they were as actors. The children who were playing, chatting, or bidding their loved ones farewell paused to gaze at the entrance, and the sight almost blinded them. Some of the girls were fainting and foaming at the mouth, while the majority were drooling with hearts in their eyes. Why wouldn't they, too? They were the epitome of perfection, with Sasuke's flawless features and primarily solemn manner making him appear like the apple on top of the tree that you couldn't reach, and Naruto's sleeveless coat revealing his well-developed muscular arm and flashing his foxy grin. Even their clothing contrasted, with Sasuke wearing darker hues and Naruto wearing brighter ones. When the guys saw Hinata's slim figure and stunning facial features, their faces turned wolfish, and you thought you might hear them howling. One of them even considered making a move on the girl, so he approached her and began to bother her, which greatly irritated her. "Hello, beautiful. Why don't you ditch these two? They look like they have enough fans," said the unidentified child. In an attempt to get a hint before Hyuuga bitch slapped him in front of everyone, she replied, "Thank you for the compliment, but I'm fine with where I am currently." He moved slightly. "Oh come on, I can be more fun than these guys," he said. After glancing at the other boys, Hinata burst out laughing. "No, I don't think so," she exclaimed, causing everyone in the vicinity to laugh at him. "Fine. Be that way you bitch," he began, but before he could finish, he choked on his own words because Naruto's ki was focused on him in an unbelievable amount. Naruto let the boy go before he could faint, and he simultaneously fell and peed in his pants. The boy's blood froze when Naruto leaned to his ear and whispered a few words. Then he screamed for his mother and fled. With curiosity, Sasuke inquired, "What did you say to him?" He grinned sadistically, making his friends shudder, and said, "Oh, just something Anko Ne-san taught me to say to idiots who can't take a hint." When they first encountered Anko, let's just say that she wasn't the most agreeable person. Then, before heading to the classroom, they took a deep breath, soaking up as much of the morning air as they could. Naruto was a multi-talented boy. Forgiveness, kindness, and compassion were all crammed into his tiny body. However, patience was what he lacked. He genuinely thought the academy would be an exciting and enjoyable place. He thought he would learn cool fighting stances and military tactics, but he was incredibly mistaken. Like in a regular school, the first-year lectures covered fundamental subjects like science and math. The glorious history of the Leaf and the Fire Nation was the main topic of these lectures. And I mean a highly edited version when I say glorious. After the first week, Naruto, who was already at the level of a college professor in these subjects, became exhausted and began to imitate a pineapple hair boy by simply dozing off during the majority of the lectures. Naturally, this caught his sensei's attention, and they began throwing pieces of chalk at the boy right away. Since he was skilled in the most potent leaf taijutsu, he could easily avoid it while he was asleep, so he would typically move his head slightly after sensing the teacher's intention. "Naruto, wake up!" cried a man whose terrifying giant head no jutsu was accentuated by a small ponytail and a horizontal scar on his nose. After yawning and rubbing one eye, Naruto replied, "Dolphin Sensei Iruka, why did you wake me up? I had a nice dream in which I was Hokage." Sasuke and Hinata were laughing on his left and right. Iruka thought, there is no way Naruto could answer, and commanded, "Oh yeah? Then tell me, oh great future Hokage, what is the answer to the question on the blackboard?" The question is far beyond his expertise in physics. I asked it to demonstrate to the class the value of fundamental knowledge. A gray-haired man said, "Iruka, don't you think you are being a little unfair?" The two senseis turned to see Naruto smiling slightly. "Mizuki, you know that I do not take well to being lazy in my class. Besides, the question is flawed." "The question is Florida," these senseis said. Both men asked, "Wah? You made a mistake when writing it. The third equation should show that lambda is a third-degree polynomial, not a fourth. This would lead to an unsolvable equation, but if it is corrected, then the answer should be x equals 71,413,228,231. Give or take," Naruto clarified with accuracy. "I'm an engineer, so don't worry." As though shaking water out of their hair, Both men quickly shook their heads to the side after that. Mizuki glanced at the blackboard where Naruto had pointed while Iruka went to check his papers normally. The two senseis would simply chastise the boy for lying. But Naruto had provided a few more numbers than their memory could recall, and they both knew the answer. Iruka affirmed, "He is right, Mizuki, down to the last digit." "No way." His partner cried as he examined the documents. Iruka questioned, "Naruto, how did you know?" Naruto retorted, "Dolphin-sensei, where did you find out about this question?" He blushed and said, "Well, I found it in this solved questions book from the Fire Capital College." There was a little commotion in the class because their teacher was trying to con them, but the boy's key and his morons expression put an end to it. The two senseis thanked the stars that they didn't have to step in because Naruto had exact control over it and none of it leaked. Naruto smiled and said, "To answer your question, sensei, read the back." Iruka's response caused everyone in the room to go gawk. Let's see. This book was created by the combined work of the college professors mentioned above and our partner Uzumaki Naruto. "You wrote this?" shouted Iruka. "Not all of it, but more than half. The difficult half," he exclaimed, appearing to be half asleep as he held his head between his desk arms. After saying, "Please wake me up only if there are explosions involved, you talk about the Hokages, or it's lunchtime," he left two senseis in a state of shock and returned to Dreamland. Over a month had gone by since the introduction, and Naruto was still ranked second in the class, behind Hinata. Since Sasuke's father valued results above all else, they got together to let him take the initiative. The boy was en route to the Hokage Tower, where you would see the elderly man every 2 months. He had plenty of free time because he had 1,000 or so clones in training and his bands were always working on his body. He considered entering through the window once more in an attempt to surprise the man. To get away from the obnoxious, Anbu pursuing him, he ducked into an alley and used his Kagami-iki while transforming into a cage bunshin. Additionally, he found that Kurama had caused his chakra to tend to stick more than it should, so once this jutsu was activated, it only required occasional chakra recharges rather than a continuous supply in order to conceal his chakra and avoid detection by even the most skilled shinobi sensors. Then he flew to the Hokage office, climbing onto the roofs. When he arrived, he discovered that Itachi was there and the elderly man had shut the window. They appeared to be in a serious meeting, but the boy's curiosity was aroused by the pained expressions on both of their faces, so he activated his Shinsogen, Sojin Seishin, and began reading their lips. The cage said, "So your clan has decided to act in a week." "Indeed, Hokage-sama. That evening, Tu-san and Ka-san will launch the assault. Please, Itachi, you have to stall them in some way while I get ready for negotiations. There will be a great deal of bloodshed and a great loss of life if they attempt a coup," Hiruzen begged. "Coup?" the boy thought. "Hokage-sama, I'll do whatever it takes, but I doubt they'll listen to reason," Itachi replied. "The night before the attack, I will call a meeting of the High Council to resolve this issue." Hiruzen buried him. Thus, the Uchiha will either be destroyed, banished, or take control of Konoha in a week, the boy thought, flinching. Then Itachi looked curiously in the direction of the blonde. "Oh fuck," the boy pondered, but he was afraid to move. "What is it, Itachi?" the Hokage inquired. "Nothin', I might be tense, but I felt like I felt something." The Uchiha brother turned back to face the man and replied. "All right, Itachi, you can go." "Hello," the Uchiha replied as she walked out the door. This served as Naruto's signal to depart as well. In the Forest of Death, he leapt from rooftop to rooftop until he arrived at his favorite location in a tree. "Are you there, Ni-san?" "Yes, kid, I did hear everything you said," Kurama replied. "What ought I to do?" the boy squeezed his knees and asked. "In my opinion, you ought to let them burn. Do you recall what I said about Madara?" "While I practice, Ni-san, what about Sasuke?" The boy's eyes filled with tears. There was silence for a while. "It's still possible that there won't be any violence. The Hokage told you." The fox made an effort to persuade the boy to keep quiet. "And if not, then you ought to save him and his mother, in my opinion." "How?" "I'm not sure, but we'll come up with something. She was one of Kushina's friends." "Thank you, Ni-san," the boy grinned before taking off. That night, Naruto was unable to fall asleep. He never stopped trying to figure out how to save his friend. He made the decision to learn more about the events first in order to have two shadow clones cloak and follow the Hokage and Itachi around the village. He poured a quarter of his chakra into them, hanged them into flies. One standing on Itachi's back and one inside the Hokage's hat, made things easier for him. Kurama's henge, which could only be dispelled by a chakra pulse, shared characteristics with his Kagami-iki. He learned that the Uchiha were preparing a coup because they believed their rivals, the Senju, had cheated them out of their position as village leaders. In other words, despite the fact that the majority of the village viewed them as heroes who were near gods, they were conceited and sought more power without waiting for it to present itself. He questioned whether he ought to attempt acting at all, but then he thought of Sasuke. They became friends during their brief time together, and he erased his doubts because he understood the anguish of being alone. Even though the days went by slowly, he learned more fascinating things. He was a master of stealth, as evidenced by the fact that his clones were able to pass several security checks on two of the village's most formidable shinobi. In addition, there were two councils in the village. The civilian and shinobi parts formed the Konoha Council, also known as the Administration Council. These addressed the fundamental facets of Konoha, such as law and commerce. The Konoha High Council and the clan leaders formed the Shinobi Division. The Hokage, his former teammates Kaharu Utatane and Homura Mitokado, and the unofficial but most powerful member aside from the Hokage, Danzo Shimura, formed the Konoha High Council, which made decisions on high-level matters and immediate actions like war. Additionally, they were meeting with Itachi and the boys' clones 2 days prior to the Uchiha coup, unbeknownst to them. With the exception of the image of the two Naru flies, one behind Sarutobi's chair and the other behind Itachi's ponytail. This canon, manga ch 590, I Will Love You Forever, depicts Itachi meeting with the council and Danzo too lazy to write. The fly on Hiruzen then quietly departed and dispersed. Naruto was furious after going through the clones' memories. The fact that Mummy Man wanted to kill even the children astounded him. He was slowly considering murdering him, but Kurama jolted him back to reality. Slow down, Kit. He is correct in a sense. Burning the entire thing, root and seeds included, is the only way to eradicate a weed forever. In this case, to stop war and retaliation. Despite his own red face, the fox attempted to reason with the boy. Even though there were alternative approaches to this, Naruto kept silent, knowing in his heart that the fox was correct. I get Ni-san, but if this is accurate, then Mikoto-san, Sasuke's mother, is also at fault. Now, what should we do? The boy pondered. We adhere to the initial plan. Once Mikoto has been secured, you question her to find out if she supports or agrees with her husband before knocking her out. We give her back and wish for the best. If it's the latter, Sasuke is not guilty. I will not allow them to corrupt the mind of an innocent person the way they did to me, no matter how much I despise them, Kurama replied, and the boy nodded. Naruto visited the Uchiha compound and sent a clone to the academy the day before the attack. He was stalking the situation while wearing a cloak. Fugaku Uchiha and the clan shinobi were either at the shinobi police station to keep up appearances or were likely preparing for the attack. Makoto was left alone in the house as a result when he saw an adult non-shinobi clan member. A.N. Description is irrelevant. Imagine what you want. Emerge through the main gate and make his way to the lake, likely to cool off on this hot day. He began to wonder how he would get her out. Naruto saw the opportunity he had been waiting for. As soon as he was close to some bushes after turning off his bands, he swiftly moved behind the man and used a precise pressure point attack to knock him unconscious. Then he whispered Zori and hid him under dense undergrowth. The blonde then got into the Uchiha and started doing laps to kill time and perspire a little. Then he rushed to the gate of the compound. He proceeded to the clan head house. While opening them at civilian speed, he made panting noises. As he quickly slid the door open and entered, he discovered Makoto Uchiha staring at him in shock. He shouted in a phony, worried tone, "Makoto-sama, come quick, it's urgent." The woman said, "What is the matter, Shimoto-san?" She heard him shout, "It's Sasuke. He is in trouble in the woods. I couldn't help him," aloud. Knowing that she was the only person still practicing shinobi on clan property, she yelled, "Sasuke!" and ushered him to take the lead. Sasuke was in trouble, was the destination they raced to at full speed. After 10 minutes, they arrived, and the woman's maternal instincts overshadowed her perception, allowing her to see that she was safely inside Training Ground 44, Forest of Death. When Naruto exclaimed, "Here we are!" they arrived at a location encircled by dense vegetation and towering, enormous trees. The woman immediately went into defensive mode as her shinobi instincts took over, but before she could do so, Naruto, disguised, lifted a half-seal and activated the trap seals that were placed on 4 nearby trees. The woman screamed, feeling her movements and chakra blocked. "Wah?" She spat out, "What does this Shimoto-san mean? Hold on, you're not Shimoto. Who are you and what do you want?" "It is none of your business who I am. In any case, I would like to have a friendly conversation. Try to scream, and these seals will knock you out," Naruto said without emotion. "I must warn you that I will know if you lie. I want to ask you if you will participate in tomorrow's coup attempt and if you will do it on your own accord or if you were forced to participate." The boy grinned. "What coup?" She pretended to be ignorant as she asked. "Don't lie to me. I told you. I am aware that your conceited husband and clansmen intend to cause the death of numerous innocent people in order to gain power, and that this will take place tomorrow. I must admit that the Hokage is also aware of this and attempted to negotiate a settlement, but Danzo overshadowed him and gave Itachi the order to slaughter your entire clan, including the children, with the exception of Sasuke," Naruto said, making every effort to remain emotionless. "No." The woman trembled and whispered, "Unfortunately, it is. Itachi is a shinobi from Konoha." Since the seals were preventing her from moving, Makoto began to cry while remaining motionless. "I told Fugaku that this will happen." Makoto said he went ahead even though I didn't want any of this. "Oh no, damn it." She cried to herself more than she admitted. "I only wanted to hear that." Then Naruto shut his eyes. "Hold on. Now what?" She questioned the man standing in front of her. "I'll knock you out now and keep you here until it's finished. I'm so sorry, but this is the best I can do. It'll be up to you." Sasuke and his sister after that, after learning about it only now through his Shinsogen, the boy was taken aback by the final detail. "What?" she yelled, appearing equally shocked. "Congratulations. It appears that you are carrying a girl. It will be your responsibility to ensure that the curse of hatred does not extend to your offspring," the boy said, turning the woman pale. "Recognize this. I will kill any Uchiha without hesitation if they dare to oppose Konoha while I am still alive." Naruto bluffed the last part and repeated what Kurama had whispered in his mind. "No, please spare the kids, but I'll make sure they grow to love our village as much as I do." She spoke honestly when she said that. "I apologize." Naruto shook his head from left to right, saying, "I can't do it. But if you're going to point the finger at someone, it's me. Don't hold the Hokage responsible. He did everything in his power to stop this." When the emotionless mask broke, Naruto's eye was wet. Makoto stood still, staring into his eyes, seeing almost a look of regret, then taking a deep breath and reflecting on their conversation for a while before realizing something. "I'm not able to. If what you say is true, I can't blame you or the Hokage," she said, causing the boy to wince. "The council is not even to blame." "Don't look at me like that," she said, causing the man in front of her to stare at her as if she were insane. "I understand how it all works because I was a shinobi. But to kill the kids," she exhaled deeply in sorrow, "Dianzu," snarling the final line. "Please don't act hastily or your children will suffer as a result. He will face justice, and if any of you want, we can make sure that you will be the headsman. Believe it, Tt Ibeo." Naruto reiterated Kurama's statement. "I hope your dreams are pleasant." After making a half sign that knocked the woman unconscious, Naruto put a piece of paper with odd symbols surrounding the middle kanji that said, "Sleep," on her forehead. A massive Komodo dragon, twice the size of an average adult, materialized when Naruto concentrated chakra in his hand and slammed it into the ground. Remember, blood or hand signals are not needed to summon a dragon. "Naruto-sama, what are your wishes?" the beast inquired. "Until this woman wakes up, Komi, keep her safe," he said, guiding Makoto to a cave close by. "Hello." In response, the dragon moved into the shadows near the entrance to the cave. And I am aware that Komodo dragons are actually large lizards or something similar. However, whatever works, works. Kurama told him to leave because it was not something he should witness, but Naruto assured him that he was aware of the Wheel of Life and that no one escapes the Shinigami. But he also knew deep down that no one should have to watch someone's life drain before their eyes. Naruto returned to the compound wearing a cloak and tried his best to conceal his chakra, standing inside a space between two roofs in case hell broke loose. When he was awakened by screaming that night, he hurried to the scene of the incident and discovered that everyone had been killed, including the children, but that there were fewer people than usual in the clan. He fought the urge to vomit as hard as he could. Remembering that he had been trained in a hospital to become accustomed to seeing blood and guts, he took a deep breath and was able to calm his stomach before he hurried back to the main house. Shinsogen activated by a seal that stored chakra that he had placed on himself behind his right ear earlier that day out of fear of being discovered if he spiked his own. Inside, he saw Itachi pulling his sword out of his father's back and sobbing. A few moments later, he saw a distortion forming beside the boy, and a man emerged from it, wearing a black trench coat with a sash, a one-eye mask with odd patterns, and a long, spiked black hair. The boy cursed that he had no way of activating Sojin-sation, and what was even more odd was that he couldn't see behind the man's mask, so he couldn't read his lips. Kurama started to shake in sheer rage inside the mindscape. "It's Madara!" Kurama cried in his head. "Kit, it's him." It's that mind rapist who killed your parents and put me on a collision path with Konoha. Naruto narrowed his eyes and thought, that's Madara. Damn, if only I could know what they are saying. He added, but Madara vanished through the same distortion. Then he reappeared at the scene of the massacre, opened the distortion, and sucked in all the bodies, including Fugaku's, before resurfacing beneath where Naruto was. The boy was breathing as quietly as he could and was grateful for the meditation exercises that Hiyashi had shown him. Well, that was them all. I'm going to take a break now. Madara's tone was icy as she spoke. How about my mom? Itachi questioned, his eyes barely dry. The ancient Uchiha replied, it makes no difference. She is aware of the coup, Itachi answered, it could have disastrous effects on my plan. No, it won't. Perhaps Danzo, like your friend Shisui, got to her. Furthermore, she is unaware of my involvement, or that you are the traitor. People will simply dismiss it as mental trauma from losing her husband. If she ever discovers anything, it doesn't matter. As I mentioned additionally, if she is still alive, she might be your little brother's lifeline, the man shot back. The blonde knew he couldn't stay there much longer because the silence would make Itachi on guard, and he had a disadvantage because he couldn't follow Itachi from a distance without the Shinsogen because his cloak affected sight not sound. Itachi nodded and went into hiding with Madara disappearing just as the seal on Naruto's ear started to tingle, indicating that there was little to no more chakra in it. The boy then deactivated his Ijutsu, and the seal vanished. It was his safe haven, and he would come in from time to time to clean it up and replenish the supplies in the preservation seals scattered everywhere. He went to the door, bit his thumb, and smeared blood on the knob, which reacted with something and glowed like a Christmas tree, before Naruto entered his apartment with a click. In the farthest corner of his bed, he threw his coat on a chair and curled up in a contemplative position. The boy thought, I hope we did the right thing. Kurama reassured the blonde, saying, don't worry, kid, we did everything we could, let's just hope for the best. Naruto muttered, you always know how to cheer me up, Ni-san, before nodding off. Naruto, good night. After waking up early the following day, taking a quick shower, eating breakfast, and getting dressed, Naruto made 2 shadow clones. He sent one of them to the Hyuuga compound and eventually to the academy, while he had the other one cloak itself and send it to the Hokage tower to obtain the most recent information. After hiding in the shadows and making his way to the hospital, which was still early and therefore not crowded, he entered and was welcomed by the receptionist, who had gotten to know him during Naruto's license practice and finally noticed the boy's positive side, which was similar to Chizoru's. Ayumi-san, good morning. You're back on the graveyard shift, he chirped. After giving a long yawn, Ayumi grinned and said, good morning, Naruto-sensei. She replied, N. Sensei means teacher or doctor. She had been impressed by the boy's accomplishments and had heard about his talent from Dr. Mamoru. Has anything unusual occurred? The boy pretended to be ignorant as he asked. It's unbelievable. The entire clan of Uchiha has been slaughtered. Uchiha Sasuke is the sole survivor. Training Ground 44 was a dangerous place, but since she was a shinobi and Komi was with her in the shadows, she was likely to arrive any moment now, she said. The boy scowled, recalling last night, but it also meant that Makoto hadn't been located yet, even though the seal should have dissolved by the time he woke up. Not at all, he yelled, pretending to be surprised. Please keep it down, as this is currently a secret only hospital employees know about, she muttered. I understand. I want to see the one who survived, he replied. He's in 627. He may be a little jittery because he just woke up and appears to be traumatized by the incident. He had contact with the murderer, according to the Anbu. I don't think so, Naruto muttered. What? I'm grateful. After responding, he proceeded to Sasuke's room. Standing in front of the door in his hospital uniform, the boy considered what he should say and how to console him for the loss of his father and brother. Taking a deep breath, he opened the door to discover Sasuke sitting on his bed, appearing to be on the verge of suicide. The blonde also saw that there was not an Anbu guard stationed nearby, which confirmed his suspicion that Danzo had already told the Hokage about his actions. Sasuke glanced at Naruto, who was displaying regret and agony, but also a level of rage that was beyond his years. Hi, Sasuke. How do you feel? The boy asked, sounding a little pleased. Naruto, what do you want? He gave a grunt. Well, as your friend and doctor, I want to see how your body is doing and how you're feeling. Naruto smiled kindly in response. How am I doing? Sasuke growled. How am I doing? How the hell do you think I'm doing? Shouted the duck ass. Itachi has killed my entire family and entire clan. Exactly how I should feel. Sasuke, I apologize, but don't give up just yet. Naruto started to tell the boy, but was cut off. Wishes? What hope? Naruto, I have no family. No more? Sasuke snarled. That's not what I would say. When the doors exploded open, Naruto wanted to shine some light on the boy's heart, but they haven't located Makoto-san's body. Sasuke. Makoto let out a cry and hurried to give the boy a hug. No. No way. You were killed by him. I witnessed him slicing off your head. While she was immobilized, Sasuke struggled. He didn't, Sasuke. You were duped by him, baby. I'm here, she sobbed to him, refusing to let go. Ka-san. Sasuke became sufficiently composed to realize that this was true. Recalling that she was pregnant, Naruto wanted to leave the two to enjoy the family moment. I apologize for disturbing you too, but you need to get checked out by a doctor, Makoto-san. It's standard. She gave him a slight scowl but nodded in agreement. However, Naruto saw that Sasuke appeared to have kissed the Shinigami and remarked, Sasuke, don't worry, trust me, she will be safe, Ibeo, he said, grinning, and left through the door without the woman noticing that she gave him a gold-stricken look. Naruto led her to the examination room as soon as they shut the door, but she stopped abruptly as they turned the corner and gave the boy a cold, expressionless look. I'm grateful. She uttered those words. I'm just doing my job, ma'am, no problem, it chirped, the blonde. For saving me so I can look after Sasuke, not for this. The boy, who thanked the heavens for his training sessions with Hiyashi, went pale on the inside but maintained his smile on the outside as she went on. Makoto-san, I'm not sure I understand, he maintained his expression. Don't act foolish. I'm also able to spot lies, especially from boys, one of the benefits of motherhood. In addition, no one else in this village ends his sentences with Ibeo, she said with a wince. You were the one who kept the Itachi away from me. Damn. Naruto pondered whether to continue lying or to come clean, concluding that if she went to the Hokage, hiding would be too much work. I believed that word would eventually land me in hot water, he admitted it. So you were the one. She attempted to persuade herself that a boy of Sasuke's age had knocked her out. Yes, but please don't raise your voice. In addition to the fact that we still need to handle Sasuke's unborn sister issue, I don't want any problems with the Hokage. He made an effort to remain composed, but then. What? Naruto, what do you mean, unborn sister, and what does Ka-san mean that you hid her from Itachi? They both turned to see who had screamed and discovered that it was Sasuke. He practically screamed. After giving it some thought, Naruto replied, I'll tell you, Sasuke, but if you get upset about anything, I'll knock you out and keep you sedated for a week. He added a little key to support his statement, and Sasuke nodded and backed off a little. First of all, congrats on becoming an older brother, Sasuke, and second of all, it's exactly what you heard, the blonde said, chirping before turning serious to prevent her from being killed. I hid her, right now. I won't say anything more than this. We'll explain everything to you, so in the meantime, stay calm. Once you're released. Makoto nodded as Naruto turned to face her. I trust you, Naruto, even though I don't like it. However, I promise to kill you if you collaborate with Itachi, he snarled. Sasuke. He yelled in surprise as Makoto reprimanded him, and he went back to his room. Oh boy. Both the woman and the blonde thought. Makoto was 7 weeks along in her pregnancy when the checkup showed that she and the unborn child were both healthy. They left as soon as they were done, going to Naruto's apartment because they were unable to return to the compound due to the ongoing investigations, which were merely a front to keep it looking like the leaf had nothing to do with the massacre. The Keeper of Secrets seal, which Naruto invented, was an advanced version of the Tomb of Secrets that could now mix and cover words to make them indescribable to confuse spies. Naruto closed the door and the curtains inside the apartment and sealed it shut after making sure that no troublesome Anbu were nearby. Makoto and Naruto told Sasuke the truth after it was finished, and the two last Uchiha lifted their jaws off the ground. Sasuke accepted it with great maturity and understanding. What? Who? However, my brother, he repeated himself. I apologize to Sasuke, but this is the reality. It's likely that your brother taught you that genjutsu so you would continue to love the leaf and despise him alone. Makoto and his sister were unexpected, but he trusted you with the Uchiha family's future. Naruto made an effort to reason with him. Why would he do it, though? He would kill his father, but why? Sasuke broke down in tears. Because the same thing would happen. With a casual response, Naruto caused the duck ass to turn to face him in shock. I'm not sure what made your father believe he could succeed, but he couldn't have been more mistaken. Naruto assumed a contemplative stance. What? Sasuke yelled. Look, I know your clan was strong, but how many people, 50, 100, were there? Naruto asked ruthlessly. Sasuke was showing signs of anxiety. What does that have to? One of you was worth 10 ordinary shinobi, something your clan always took pride in. Nevertheless, the village is home to about 4,000 active shinobi who support the Hokage, not to mention the elderly man himself. Don't be cocky and do the math. I have personally healed a few Uchiha, and even they can bleed, Naruto clarified. But, reality was choking Sasuke. Sasuke, it's real, I told your father the same thing, but he simply ignored me. Makoto was practically in tears. What about my brother? I get it. Sasuke was genuinely perplexed. You decide that, but be aware of this, in exchange for saving you, he gave up much of his humanity and his freedom. Naruto informed Sasuke, who appeared shocked and hurt. You can put the blame on me if you want to. The duck ass was even more shocked when Naruto shot back. I wasn't strong enough to stop this, Naruto went on. Never again dare you say something like that. I already told you that it couldn't be avoided, yelled Makoto. You yourself even said it. However, I was unable to save the children either, Naruto winced. Silence. You yourself are a child. What right did anyone have to accuse you? If anyone is to blame, it's that fossil Danzo, the woman went on. She gripped her fist tightly. I will murder him. Sasuke snarled. No, you won't. Together, Makoto and Naruto uttered those words. We cannot engage in open combat with him because he is too dangerous, Makoto informed the youngster. But, young man, no buts, Makoto yelled at him, leading Naruto to believe that mothers are frightening. Sasuke, she's right. You can't act that way against him. I mean, take a look at your family's situation. More accidentally than intentionally, Naruto struck a tender spot. Naruto, I can see what he did. I must kill him because of this. The duck ass remained unyielding. No, you don't see anything, you damn brat, Naruto said, grabbing Sasuke by the collar. The conceit that Fugaku ingrained in you is invisible to you. What it is transforming you into is invisible to you. Your brother's sacrifice isn't even visible to you. You've been wronged, so all you see is retaliation. And once you've exacted your retribution, what'll be left for you? An empty space in your heart. I'll tell you. What about the people who will follow you after you've exacted your retribution? Will you kill them or will you accept their justice and pass away? Right? Snapping, Sasuke said, Brat, what dare you do? Do you know what I am going through right now? Do you have any idea what it's like to lose all but one family member and to have your brother so severely wounded? Oh, I forgot, you have no family. Slap. Makoto was standing in front of him, her enraged eyes filled with tears, and Sasuke touched his cheek. Ka-san, what made you do that? Sasuke raised her hand for another one, but Naruto stopped her before he could finish his sentence. Sasuke, you're both right and wrong. Even though I don't have a family of my own, I adore the people in my life. For them, I would sacrifice my life. I am also aware of pain. Were you aware that the Kyuubi survived? No, he cannot be killed, but at birth, he was sealed inside of me. Don't ask me why, however, I will admit that I was alone and despised. Sasuke, they used to do horrible things to me that would have killed anyone else, but every time the Kyuubi saved me, I was spared. I could survive being burned at the stake, and I recover more quickly than any other person. Makoto and Sasuke's eyes widened threefold, but the glares were what Sasuke found most painful. What does it feel like to be viewed as though you are made of glass? Like you're the beast even though you're not there? No, what do you know about the pain I felt when I was looking for food in dumpsters and everyone ignored or hurt me? I had warm food, people who listened to me, and people who cared for me if I was hurting. What are you aware of, you pampered brat? Without lifting his gentle voice, Naruto remarked, Sasuke, I understand how these things operate. I needed to know them to get by every day. I understand the workings of the human mind. And I don't want it to hurt you. That's why, even though I could have just ignored it, I put my life in danger to save your mother, Naruto informed Sasuke, who sincerely felt bad about what he had said earlier. Remember to think before you lose your cool. We will bring Danzo to justice the proper way, but I'm not advocating for him to get away with it. How? I'm not sure yet, but we'll find out. And as I promised your mother, if you still want retribution after we become shinobi, I will do everything in my power to have one of you be the executioner. The blonde received 2 nods for her deadly conviction. Sasuke muttered, Naruto, while glancing at the ground. Well, you're right, and I apologize, Sasuke admitted. Don't worry, these days, you've been through a lot. After Naruto rubbed his upper lip, the boys shook hands in front of Makoto, who was grinning. All we need to do now is make sure Danzo receives what he is due, Makoto snarled. However, Sasuke inquired as Naruto pondered, there is no doubt that it won't be simple and quick. You two still need to pretend that Itachi was the murderer, Sasuke and Makoto-san. Sasuke, you must act as though your only goal in the academy is power and nothing else, and that your only goal is to slowly kill Itachi. Additionally, we must ensure that we end up on the same team, but how? Naruto clarified. The main rule is that a shinobi's secret can be revealed for the benefit of the village and other reasons, but I know I'm not supposed to tell you this because it's against village law to discuss it with non-shinobi or potential shinobi. With a few minor deviations, the genin teams are organized according to 2 rules. According to the first rule, grades must be balanced, which means that the class's best boy and girl must be paired with the worst boy based on grades. This is done to ensure that each team has an equal chance of surviving in the field by balancing their power. The team's sensei completes the second task. They can select the genin for their teams if they choose to have a balanced team or a specialized team for tasks like tracking. Makoto clarified. The exceptions are when a council member uses his position of authority to give their children or someone they like a much better position. For example, I heard that the Yamanaka, Nara, and Akamichi want to form the second generation Ino Shika Cho with their children. After reading about their legendary combos, Naruto was impressed and wondered if their kids could outdo them. However, he quickly got over his doubts and resumed his thoughts until he had an epiphany. I understand. It's really that easy. We only need to complete the first 2 requirements, and I don't see any issues with us getting together. With a sly smile, Naruto made the other 2 stare at him as if he were insane. You and I are the top 2 students in our grade, unless you're missing Naruto, Sasuke clarified while shedding a lot of perspiration. All right. As the last, for the time being, Uchiha capable of the Sharingan, since Makoto was by marriage and not by blood, I will take the fall because receiving poor grades would put you in a bad position for our plan and draw too much attention. We still have 3 more years to complete it. In addition, it should relieve me of those annoying Nei agents and divert attention from my case, making it much simpler for me to move stealthily. In addition, if everything goes according to plan, Hinata will become our 3rd member, and I will ensure that she does. When Naruto brought up the final point, he did so with a savage smile fit for Anko. And I'll try my best to look into Danzo from within the council, Makoto proposed. Makoto-san, I believe it would be best for you to keep quiet for a bit. Keep your senses keen for any Danzo-related activity and try to support the first part's plan without drawing too much attention to yourself. However, don't actively search for him because I've heard that people who do that mysteriously vanish. The woman continued to nod in Naruto's direction. After working out the specifics of the plan, they parted ways, with Naruto staying in his apartment and getting into bed after taking a quick shower. Helluva day, thought Naruto. Kid, you can say that again, a deep voice inside him said. The boy went on, I don't know why I'm going so far with this Nii-san. Just so you know, Naruto, that mummy bastard wants the kid's Hokage hat. I don't. Not to mention that he wanted to turn us into a mindless weapon, Kurama responded, startling the blonde. You were too young to recall, but we were present when he made the proposal. After making Kurama proud with his snarling, Naruto fell asleep. Naruto woke up the following day to a knock on the door, still wearing his clothes from the previous night's sleep, having forgotten to change them, and opened it to a scene that chilled his blood. Haruko-san, good morning. As if he were seeing the Shinigami, he stammered. Greetings, Naruto-kun. Do you mind if I enter? Her voice was sweet as she spoke. She sat down on the bed after the blonde nodded and invited her inside. Which tea would you like? Naruto made an effort to change the mood a bit. She nodded and grinned, and Naruto poured 2 cups of the brew, one for Haruko, who was patiently waiting. After quickly boiling water and adding the tea leaves, she thanked him, took a sip, and placed the cup on a small nightstand. Would you mind explaining to me, Naruto-kun, why you didn't bother to tell me where you went the night before? Additionally, I already know that was a shadow clone, so don't try to claim that you were at home. In a maternal tone, she went on. He gave himself over to his fate and thought, yikes. It must have dispelled overnight. Guess the cat's out of the bag. After learning that Sasuke had been admitted for unclear reasons, I decided to visit the hospital to see how he was doing. Since it was Saturday and I had already arrived, I simply kept working and forgot the time I just came here and fell asleep because I was so exhausted, and the apartment was the closest to the hospital. It appears that I even neglected to change my clothes. Naruto omitted the scene in which he spoke to the Uchiha pair, but he didn't actually lie. He detested lying for no apparent reason. Why didn't you inform us that you were working, even though I had heard about him and Makoto-san? she inquired. To be honest, I didn't think you would notice. I simply forgot about it because I had a clone at home in case something went wrong. He acknowledged that he felt somewhat ashamed of himself. Then Haruko stood up, grabbed him by the ear, and pulled him into the kitchen. Ow, ow. He didn't struggle or object, but he said it behind his teeth. After setting him down at the table and opening the farthest cupboard, which caused him to turn pale, the woman removed a couple of sealing scrolls with various kanji on them. She then poured a small amount of chakra into them, and a large bowl filled with various vegetables appeared. Haruko then placed the bowl in front of Naruto, who was resisting the urge to run and throw up. You understand the procedure now, she reprimanded the blonde in a motherly manner, saying, you eat one large bowl of salad every time you cause us anxiety. I suppose I can't persuade you to forgive me this time, can I? Haruko scowled and shifted her head back and forth as Naruto attempted to haggle his way out. Then, with a sigh, Naruto said, give me the salt, in a voice that was half dead. The following day, Naruto, Hinata, and her mother were walking to school. As part of his punishment, he was strictly forbidden from eating ramen for the entire week. Although Naruto didn't like it, he acknowledged that he deserved it, and the food he received from the clan wasn't too bad, but at the moment, he really wanted to get rid of the aftertaste from the salad. It would take a week for him to forget about the horrible mix, and Haruko was aware of this, so she was now on surveillance duty. Now that she was completely recovered, she could even train her rusty body, but she still took the time to enjoy the things she loved, even though she knew that the boy would obey her order if she told him to avoid Ichiraku. To anyone else, the woman appeared to be a harmless mother walking two children to school, but her targets would freeze with the objects in their hands as they saw the creature that usually scared the living daylights out of Hiyashi, looking at least 4 times larger than an adult and waving her index finger from side to side in a no fashion. She even responded to those who wanted to throw things at the boy and noticed the glares Naruto received from the villagers on their way. She would see a few blurs around the area where Naruto walked, and sometimes she would even see a flash of some sort. Haruko activated her Byakugan and saw that all of the abnormalities were actually girls the same age as the other kids walking beside her. She deactivated her Dujutsu and was about to confront the closest one when Naruto stopped her. Haruko-san, it doesn't work. I've already tried to ignore them, chase them away, frighten them, and even bribe them, but they persist, Naruto sighed. What are they seeking? Asked the bewildered woman. I'm not sure. They typically follow me around in this manner, but the braver ones even carry battery-operated vacuums to pick up any hair or bread particles I may have left behind. Naruto went on. Anything larger than that is treated as an artifact, such as the lunch wrapper I used last week. Naruto was too busy watching out for the crazy girls to notice Haruko's confusion, but she heard the woman giggling when Hinata pulled her aside and whispered something in her ear. Hinata-chan just informed me that you have a fan club, Naruto-kun. She persisted in causing the girl to flush. A what? Are you referring to Sasuke's? How could he have missed it? Then how in the world do I get rid of it? Naruto grimaced. Well, Naruto-kun, as far as I know, there are only 3 ways to lose it, the woman said, her laughter growing a bit louder. One would be to kill them all, she said, making the boy's eyes bulge. Her tone was mockingly serious, but the closer fans gave a silent yelp. Too extreme, Naruto said, causing the girls to calm down. The second would be to inform them that you don't like them, Haruko laughed. Oh my god, no, Naruto shuddered. Getting a girlfriend would be number 3. The woman gave Hinata hope by grinning at her. Where can I purchase one of those? Making the mother-daughter slouch, Naruto deadpanned. Perhaps somewhere nearby, Haruko made a suggestion. One of my admirers? Absolutely not, although they are pleasant girls. I find them a little too eerie, he uttered those words. An individual even nearer to you? Haruko wanted to give him a head slap. For example, creating a clone and making it henge. However, that would be a hassle. Haruko gave herself a mental face palm when Naruto responded. The woman kept her eyes on Hinata and said, not that close. After a few moments to process the information, Naruto returned in shock. Hinata. The girl blushed even more when he said it aloud, without shouting. Not at all, I mean, could you imagine me and Hinata together? He asked, crossing his arms, almost bringing the Hyuuga heiress to tears without observing the girl's tears in the corner of her eyes. He went on. How come you would say that to Hinata-chan, Naruto? Do you really think that Hinata-chan would not be someone fit for you? The girl's mother reprimanded him. She almost spat out. What? What are you saying? The opposite is what I meant. Despite the fact that I like her, I mistakenly believed she was like a brother to me. With a little bewildered, he replied, I mean, but was cut off by a tearful Hinata's kiss, which caused his stalkers to blow up. "You're a baka." Hinata practically sobbed, which made the boy appear even more shocked, but he quickly stopped it. "Is that the first time we've spent together?" She gave Naruto a tight hug after he grinned at her. "Oh." A giggling Haruko, who just so happened to be carrying a camera, brought them back from their dreamland, making both children very angry. "Ka-sama." Hinata yelled to her mother, and Naruto appeared somewhat stunned before the redness subsided and he grinned at her. "Are you saying that you and Hiyashi-sama are in agreement? What did you get with that?" he asked, receiving a smiley nod in return indicating the camera. "Oh, just the hug and kiss." As for Naruto, she whistled in an attempt to embarrass them, and it succeeded for Hinata. "Copies are what I want." He grinned, and Naruto noticed that Haruko had a question mark over her head. "Don't tell me you were hoping to tease me with them?" "Ignore it." He crossed his arms, sporting a playful smug expression. "Naruto-kun, you're no fun." "Why?" She lowered her shoulders, and Hinata gave him a perplexed look. The cover of his pornographic novel was altered by a man to read, "Fine reading." I was able to get past it before I could even turn away by using shadow reading. "Nothing compares to those kinds of thoughts," he said, creating a new shade of red with Hinata. "I will slowly wring the living daylights out of the person who did it if I ever manage to get my hands on them," Naruto replied. "Stand in line." As the shadowy figure behind her cracked its knuckles, Haruko spoke to him. An old man with long, white hair and a forehead protector bearing the kanji for oil, lived in a different country far from Konoha. Achoo! Sneezed out loud. "Oh boy, someone must be talking about me, and judging by the intensity of the sneeze, it can't be good." Everyone in the child's academy here received the news that Naruto and Hinata were together. As the remainder of the year went by, the boy initially had a few issues with some of the other boys in the class who felt he already had enough girls and didn't need the sexiest one, with the exception of one Inuzuka Kiba, who simply couldn't take a hint until he beat him into the ground during a sparring match. He blasted them away with massive ki. Rewind. "Alright class. Today we have some basic sparring matches to see where your taijutsu is at. Right now each one of you come down and take a slip of paper from the desk. Boys to the left and girls to the right. I will supervise the boys while Mizuki-sensei will see to the girls." Haruka made the point. Each of them selected a slip of paper, and Sasuke selected Shikamaru, Naruto selected Kiba, and Hinata selected Sakura. Naruto was making good progress on his plan. He was seriously falsifying his physical fitness, and his grades began to suffer. Moreover, Mizuki began to teach the blonde after noticing that the gray-haired man was making every effort to undermine his training. The sensei tried everything. Genjutsu on his test papers, terrible taijutsu forms, incorrect hand signals, you name it. The fact that Kurama was yelling at Naruto to just do it made it harder for him to resist the urge to kill the man. However, the boy benefited from this since he could now better conceal his actual skills by following Mizuki's instructions. He descended near Shikamaru's location. Kiba's physical prowess kept him afloat despite his lack of improvement. They arrived at the training ground of the academy. With the exception of training posts at the edge, it appeared to be a barren field devoid of grass from years of use. The rules were explained by the two teachers: just taijutsu, no killing, no maiming, and no chakra. When instructed to do so, you begin or end the fight, or the opponent is unable to continue. Shikamaru gave up, so Sasuke didn't have much of a fight. Sakura was exhausted by Hinata's use of the Ryusei, which she was able to master better than Naruto because of her flexibility, and she was simply slapped to the ground, where she fainted from exhaustion. Naruto was next in line. He positioned himself and considered how he would continue to pretend he intended to take 2 or 3 blows before he collapsed to the ground and was unable to stand. His words caused the plan and his hopes of winning to collapse in the background. "Yahoo! I finally get to clobber this bookworm. Then Hinata will see what a loser you are and will come to me. I bet I will kiss her by tonight," he exclaimed. Then he heard a loud crack and boom as Naruto's blow split one of the training posts in two. The blonde appeared extremely angry and was standing erect. The poor piece of wood, as thick as he was to his right, and a few inches back, on the ground in the rear was its top, which had a dent in it that resembled the impression of a fist's bottom. To explain, just line your elbow with both shoulders and straighten out your arm. Naruto struck the wood with the bottom of his fist, making the motion of hitting it horizontally with his shoulder. When Kiba realized this, he began to perspire. His bands, which now weighed about 420 pounds on each limb, were disabled by Naruto. Naruto snarled, "Any last wish, dog breath?" Despite his stupidity, the Inuzuka had instincts, and at this moment, those instincts warned him of a world of suffering. Chill out man, I was kidding," Kiba said, raising his arms in submission. Again, Naruto asked, "Any last wish?" Kiba yelled, "How about, don't kill me?" After witnessing Naruto break that thick post, Iruka became a little concerned, but he was unable to be partial. "All right, that's enough. Begin," was the only thing he could say. Granted. Naruto grinned before vanishing from view. Then, in a flash, he materialized in front of Kiba and struck the dog boy in the high back with his heel, sending him face first to the ground and causing him to faint. Astonished by the spectacle, Iruka declared Naruto the victor before escorting the unconscious pupil to the medical facility. As a result, Kiba and the majority of the boys knew, or at least pretended, that Hinata was forbidden. Since then, Naruto has also never prevailed in a battle, with the exception of those who gave up on him after sensing his ki, such as the Inuzuka. Flashback ends. The guard informed him that Hiashi wanted to see the Hokage, who was just entering the gates. After speculating about their desires, Naruto prepared for the encounter. When he opened the door to Hiashi's office, he saw that Haruko was present in addition to the man and the Hokage, and they all appeared unhappy. "Oh boy." The three nodded in return as Naruto sagged and said nothing. Naruto bowed and said, "You wish to see me, Hiashi-sama?" With a nod, Hiashi gestured for the boy to take a seat between the two other adults. Hiashi said, "Naruto-kun, do you know why I called you here?" The boy replied solemnly, "I don't, but I suppose it has to do with how I performed in the academy." "Indeed. Well, to skip the suspense, would you tell us why you competed for the position of lowest in class?" Hiashi responded. He rested his eyes for a moment and then replied, "I can't lie to you. There are a lot of reasons, but, for now I can only tell you most of them. As for the rest, I'm sorry I gave my word, but I can assure you that they bring no danger to either the village or the clan. Don't worry, it's not a deal with any Anbu." Sarutobi and Hiashi both arched an eyebrow. They considered making the boy tell everything, but then they recalled that they had faith in him. Both of them were aware that Naruto was not the innocent youngster he gave the impression he was, and that when he was serious, he could be extremely stubborn. Haruko was simply concerned. Hiruzen remarked, "That is fine, but are you sure that those secrets are best kept from us?" When Naruto replied, "The first thing I do when I become Genin will be to tell you everything." Both men nodded, becoming even more at ease as far as they were concerned. Naruto had little choice but to become a shinobi. The adults nodded in agreement as he explained, "The first reason my grades dropped is because of shinobi rule number 1. Surprise is the biggest advantage. If nobody knows what I'm really capable of, then they will underestimate me." They were taken aback by Naruto's cunning. "To get the pain off your behinds would be the second reason," Naruto grinned. "What do you mean?" Kage asked. Startled, the boy replied, "I mean the pain of the council Hokage GG." He sat in a contemplative pose as the adults gaped at Naruto's accuracy. "I know that the administration council, especially the civilian part, are giving you constant headaches about me, and seeing how smart I really am would make them even more restless and could make them take drastic measures. In fact, I think that this could work out in my benefit as well," he said. The two men simultaneously asked, "How do you know that?" When Naruto grinned and said, "So I was right," the two men flushed. "Anyway, this should take the heat off our backs. The last reason is because I found out how the Genin teams are formed, and I want to end up in the same team as Sasuke and Hinata, and since both of them are heirs, I left the top positions to them and I got dead last," Naruto admitted. Hiruzen almost yelled, "How did you found out about that?" With an evil smirk, Naruto replied, "Hey, I got info on what happens in the council from you. Do you think it was that hard to figure it out?" With a sigh, Hiruzen said, "I guess not. Haruko got involved. But Naruto-kun, I understand that you care for Hinata and your friend, but you know that Hiashi-san could have gotten you in that team, right? Remember that the Hyuga are on the council as well." "Yes, I thought of that, but it would put the clan in the hot seat for favoring the demon child. It took them a long time to get used to me living here, and that was with Hokage Gigi's help. At least that's what I heard from some drunken Junin. What would happen when he can't get involved due to favoritism?" Naruto breathed a sigh of relief, and the adults that he was correct. "That was all I can tell, for now at least. Except that Makoto Uchiha-san also knows about this but is under the same oath of secrecy," Naruto replied. "Makoto?" asked a startled Hiruzen. He had the same level of trust in the woman as Itachi, but he was unable to approach her in the same manner because she was a mother and a retired shinobi. Then Naruto was given a pass. They started whispering as soon as he left the room. The Hyuga leaders were asked by Hiruzen, "So, what do you two think?" "He carries too many weights on his shoulders. He cares more about his friends and family than his own dreams. I don't like the fact that he is involved in so many secrets, but I am not in any position to talk about it," Hiashi said. A little saddened by Naruto's sacrifice, Haruko went on, I think I did wrong by teaching him politics, but I also think that he could have found it out himself due to the village's views of him. Indeed, while it is true that the civilian councillors and a portion of the High Council have stopped watching him like hawks, he still should have left this to the adults. He is far too young to worry about such things. I will have to have a chat with Makoto to see where this is going. Hiruzen then offered his opinion. With all due respect, Hokage-sama, even though I agree fully with your words, I also think that we can all agree that Naruto's childhood unfortunately ended when he was born and the villagers found out what he contained. Also, I need to remind you of the strained relationship you have with the boy and would like to ask you to tread with care regarding Uchiha-san, Hiyashi said with a grave voice. Indeed. Hiruzen turned to face the ceiling, where a picture of Kushina and Minato was visible. I apologize. The man winced. Well, it's no use crying over spilt milk. I know how stubborn Naruto-kun can be when helping another. Could you believe that he ate a whole big bowl of salad without complaining when I caught him working overtime at the hospital without telling me? Besides, you both know that he is not stupid, so we should do our best to watch over him and give him the support he needs. Haruko laughed as the men agreed. They failed to notice a tiny mosquito in Haruko's hair, and as soon as their meeting was over, it flew outside and vanished in a thick cloud of smoke, a considerable distance from the compound. Naruto grinned as he entered his room as the dobi, or dead last of the class. Naruto spent the following 3 years donning the orange jumpsuit that was part of the canon. The blonde discovered that it was more difficult to be the fool on the floating line than it was to be at the top. He saw that Shikamaru was in a similar situation, but that the Nara's position as last seemed to come much more naturally to them, as if it were inherited. Sarutobi kept his promise and called Makoto to his office. The woman gave a more thorough explanation, but not enough to paint a complete picture, stating that her son would hopefully understand everything once he was genin and that he would just need to wait. Nothing will happen before this, she assured him. Fortunately, the Hokage agreed with her and chose not to pursue the issue. When not working at the hospital, the blonde would frequently train with Sasuke and Hinata, who were at least mid-chunin. Since Naruto was a walking library, they would even study together and he would tutor them. On the other hand, Naruto was filled with joy once more when Sasuke and Makoto opened the Uchiha library for them. He mostly focused on the section on brute information and ignored the part about jutsu. Eventually, Naruto informed the two about Kurama and even arranged for them to meet him in the mindscape of the forest. It would be an understatement to say that they shit themselves when they saw the fox, but they eventually warmed up to one another and became friends. After that, the boy began practicing his own element, wind, which he eventually mastered in a few months. Since she had far less chakra than the boys, Hinata chose not to train her element just yet. Instead, she continued to hone her juken and control, adding flexibility to reduce the amount of chakra she used. The blonde discovered she had a natural gift for healing since she enjoyed creating medical salves, and she also started learning basic medical jutsu from Naruto. Despite her concerns, she consented to participate in the plan after Naruto thoroughly explained it to her under oath of secrecy. When Dr. Mamoru learned about his grades, he had to explain the same thing he had told the Hokage, but the hospital administrator completely agreed with him and even assisted him in getting out wherever he needed to go by making up excuses about injuries or other things. The days continued in this manner until Naruto and his friends attended the academy the day before the graduation exam at the age of 12 in order to give the young, aspiring shinobi time to develop emotionally. Sarutobi and the council banned skipping grades after the Uchiha incident, because it was believed that Itachi's genius condition drove him insane and caused him to murder his family. The minimum graduation age is now 12. They were chatting among themselves, the hero trio. Guys, said Naruto, the duck ass was brooding to maintain his image? The blonde whispered, receiving 2 nods. You know that only grades matter for the team assignments, right? He made Hinata sad and the brunette smirked by saying, well, why don't we drop the masks for the test? I challenge you to a duel of the exam, oh great Uchiha. The latter was observed by Naruto. The fact that he was correct and had a point made her feel better. Sorry, I would challenge you to Hinata-chan, but you know that Kunoichi compete with Kunoichi, female ninja, he said. Whispering, you're on? Sasuke said. The earth began to tremble like a stampede as soon as they had finished speaking. Oh no. The 3 of them pondered as the rumbling grew closer and louder. Before long, the doors opened, and 2 girls, if you can call them that, screamed loudly. First, I win. It was Sakura Haruno and Ino Yamanaka, the presidents of Sasuke's obnoxious fan club. Sakura went to the previous group's location after their argument. Canon was resolved and she emerged victorious. They all said, oh no, in unison, though not loudly. Sasuke was seated in the center, followed by Hinata, while Naruto sat outside to Hinata's chagrin. Sakura would frequently boss Naruto around during his former academy years because he pretended to be a complete moron. The blonde had to constantly prevent the Hyuuga heiress from murdering Bubblegum Head in order to avoid upsetting Naruto. The pink bookworm didn't believe the stories her classmates told her because she didn't witness Naruto getting angry when he beat Kiba. When she got to the trio's side, the ultimate fangirl, A.N. "Hey, sounds like some kind of pastry," barked. "Move, Naruto Baka. I want to sit next to Sasuke-kun." "Haruno-san, would you please keep the volume down? There are other seating options nearby, so please choose another one as Sasuke obviously doesn't want to be seated anywhere close to you," he replied in a tone that was deceptively sweet to conceal the sarcasm. She raised her hand to punch him and did so, but Naruto easily caught it. "No, I want to sit next to Sasuke-kun. Now move, Baka," she said. "Too simple. She has resumed her diet." He let out a mental sigh. Dieting was simply inappropriate for a ninja. It rendered you physically feeble, and weakness could mean the difference between your own and your allies' deaths. Then, simultaneously grabbing her throat and holding it tight, he pulled her in by the knuckles. Naruto growled, allowing Kurama's chakra to fill his system, giving him slit eyes, sharp fangs, and claws that terrified the poor fangirl to death. "Now listen here, Haruno-san. I will not move, not on your orders. Now take your loud ass mouth and move the hell away before I lose my temper, you fucking banshee," they said before anyone else could notice. He retracted the Biju chakra. He then discreetly and swiftly healed her bruises before releasing her, and she disappeared with a speed that no one, not even herself, knew she possessed. Then Sasuke pushed the blonde and said, "Thanks," in a whisper. Two adults came in as the doors slid open again. Iruka chirped, "Good morning, class." But no one paid attention, and the students were acting very unruly. After that, the sensei received a tick mark. Using his large head jutsu, he screamed, "Quiet, you little brats," and was able to calm them down. He chirped again, causing the children to drop. "That's better. I hope you all slept well and studied because today is the graduation written exam," he said. With a noticeable frown on his face, Mizuki gave Naruto his exam sheet as the two men began distributing them. Each student looked at the questions on the opposite side of their paper after receiving it. Although Naruto's appeared normal for some reason, he used his Shinsogen as a precaution. Aside from the battle-ready genjutsu, he was shocked to discover one of the most intricate he had ever seen. "Mizuki-sensei is so intent on my failure. Since Kurama-ni would have to deal with me for another year, I don't think that's the only reason, but why? He must be up to something else." With Mizuki smiling like a fool, Naruto considered, but then recalled the challenge he had with Sasuke. As a result, Ranpu was active and answered all the right questions without destroying the genjutsu on the paper. All three of them left the room and went outside to the yard after finishing the exam in record time. Sasuke's comment, "I would ask you how it was for you, but the exam was just too easy," received two nods. Naruto exclaimed, "Guys, I think Mizuki is out to get me." In response, Sasuke said, "No flash news there." "Yeah, but this time it was subtle. Each question had its own genjutsu as well as one over the whole page. He really wanted me to flunk. And it couldn't have been about Ni-san. He would have wanted to get rid of me as fast as possible and send me to my death considering my academic performance. Not keep me around another year," Naruto clarified. Hinata contributed her thoughts, saying, "True, he wouldn't have used such a complex jutsu if he just wanted you to flunk." Sasuke remarked, "I think he is up to something." Naruto said, "I agree, I will go talk to Hokage Gigi," and turned away. Sasuke twitched and Hinata giggled, saying, "He ditched us, again," before they both fled home. When Naruto showed up with a swirl of leaves, Hiruzen was enjoying himself immensely while he and his two shadow clones were taking care of paperwork and peeking into the Konoha Onsen's women's baths with haste. The Hokage turned off his jutsu. The boy chirped, "Hey Hokage Gigi," an elderly man said, "And Naruto, how did you?" "I shunshined through the open window," Naruto exclaimed, gesturing to the window's location. "What were you up to?" Sarutobi reluctantly replied, "H Hokage stuff, see concerning the security of the village." He made the Hokage blush in shame and the walls snicker in silence when he said, "If that stuff is about one crystal ball, one onsen, and Neko-san as your guard today, I know why your walls were growling." Naruto changed into his solemn mask and remarked, "Anyway, that's not why I'm here. I came here to tell you that I suspect Mizuki-sensei of no good." Even though he already knew the answer, Sarutobi asked, "Naruto, are you sure? It isn't just a trick to get revenge on your sensei for failing you, is it?" With a serious expression on his face, Naruto asked, "Do you really think so low of me? Hiruzen responded by swaying his head back and forth. Sarutobi questioned, "What evidence do you have of this no good?" Naruto continued by telling the elderly man the same things he had told Sasuke and Hinata. "That's just it, I don't," he exclaimed. After giving it some thought, Sarutobi realized that Naruto was right, as he usually is when he is serious. Cage thought, what can we do about this? I don't know. It seems that the only way to find out what he is planning is for me to actually fail, but then again I don't really want to repeat the year, but I'm willing to take one for the safety of the village, sadly replied Naruto. Then Hiruzen had a thought. He chirped, "Then maybe you should fail," and Naruto's expression alternated between, "Are you crazy? Okay, and, I'm going to kill you. No, not like that. I am going to test you right here and now with the Anbu as the witness. That's it if you think you passed the written portion, as I believe you to be capable of doing," the Hokage exclaimed. Perspiring as he saw this, Hiruzen laughed. The boy slumped at the thought of his sensei, saying, "Are you kidding me? I wrote a quarter of those questions." Iruka-sensei forgot to check the sources of his questions again? During a brief, canon with minor changes, conversation about Naruto with the terrified man, Hiruzen concurred with him. "Okay then. Now for the taijutsu portion. I know that you are a master of Juken in your original style Ryusei, so that's a pass with full marks. The shuriken and kunai. I saw you many times using your clones as practice dummies and hit them, moving targets, without fail, so another full marks. Ninjutsu and genjutsu I don't really know that much except shadow clones and ranpu abilities." Naruto admitted, "Well, I can do all 3 academy jutsu, but they have an issue." Hiruzen raised an eyebrow, asking, "What issue?" Naruto said, "I mean this," and hanged into Mizuki without using hand seals. The boy said, "Try to touch my head, gently." Sarutobi forgot the gentle part and gave Naruto a hard slap after attempting to touch Mizuki's head, believing it to be a mere illusion. Growling, Naruto exclaimed, "Ow, I said gently." "Wah?" exclaimed the Hokage, startled. "It is still the academy jutsu. It's because of Kurama ni-san's chakra that the academy henge is just the same as the Junin version that makes it real. The same with the bunshin. It looks just like a cage bunshin, but without memory transfer. My Kawarimi is much stronger too. I can pull living beings using the same chakra that you would use to pull a log. All jutsu use the same chakra as the academy ones, but as you can see," Naruto stopped speaking and nodded. Henge can be solid in the original series. If you don't believe me, check it out. I just modified the story to fit my FIC. Taking a tiny hologram of the Hokage in his hand, the boy once again admitted, "As for genjutsu, for the same reason I can't use normal illusions, but I can still project soundless images with my ranpu abilities, and I'm virtually immune to all genjutsu thanks to Kurama ni-san's help and my ranpu chakra that cleanses my system of any foreign mass or chakra." He then transformed back into his true form. Well, the exam was never about casting genjutsu, but breaking them. Casting one would earn extra points, so that means you get full points again and a little bonus thanks to the unique ranpu genjutsu and the kawarimi. All in all, you have passed full points with extra, the man said, dismissing the Anbu to scatter as he went to his desk to retrieve an old but still shiny forehead protector. The Hite 8 appeared to have been through a lot of use. After observing the agents departing, Naruto subtly activated Keeper of Secrets, which caused Hiruzen to smile. As Hiruzen tied the forehead protector to the boy's head, who was grinning and fighting back tears, he said, "Congratulations, Genin Naruto Namikaze Uzumaki. This was your father's Hite 8. I kept it to give it to you when you graduated or reached 16 years of age. Now I'm going to hand you your first C-rank mission. You are to find out if and what is Mizuki planning and report your findings to me." "Hi Jii." Naruto replied, standing alertly and grinning a little. Our hero trio is seen standing together in the class the following day. Naruto informed them, "So that's what happened, guys." A whispered, "Congratulations," came from Hinata. "HN." Smirked Sasuke. Naruto grinned back and said, "Now let's see what score you get, Sasuke." The threatened Sasuke said, "Get ready to cry, Naruto." "Fat chance." The blonde replied in jest. Iruka and his gray-haired companion came in at that precise moment. Although the man addressed the class politely, the same response was seen as yesterday. "All right class, settle down so we can begin." The big head jutsu strikes once more, saying, "I said silence, you brats." "That's better. Now first of all I would like to say that some of you did well where some of you didn't do so good on yesterday's test. You will find out your scores later, if you pass the physical challenge of the genin tests. Okay, let's get to it. I want you all to wait outside before we call you in." The dolphin responded with a tone of extreme happiness. As a result, The entire class went outside to wait for their turn. The first was the targeting exam, in which students used 10 shuriken and 10 kunai to strike a stationary target dummy in the vitals. Naruto purposefully missed a couple of the perfect points that Sasuke and Hinata received because he had many shabby and twisted kunai and shuriken concealed by weak genjutsu. It was simpler for him to fake it. Once more, the brunette and blue pair received full points with a little extra for fusing their clan style with the academy style during the taijutsu portion of the test, where a student had to compete against an instructor while the other sensei observed and assessed style and inventiveness. Conversely, Naruto feigned it once more using the moves Mizuki had taught him. Adding 1 or 2 correct moves here and there to keep himself from failing, he was still curious about his friend's activities. The final section, the ninjutsu and genjutsu examination, then arrived. The first to enter, Hinata emerged a few minutes later beaming, having aced it and even trapping Mizuki in a genjutsu to earn a few extra points. It was Sasuke's turn after another group of students, and he eventually emerged with his classic smirk. He even went so far as to capture them both in a genjutsu in which they both saw one another as monsters, earning points. A desk brimming with fresh leaf Hite 8 was visible to Naruto as he entered. His own was still in the pocket of his jumpsuit, kept near his chest. In sensei mode, Iruka exclaimed, "Okay Naruto, I want you to perform the 3 academy jutsu plus to escape from a simple genjutsu." Naruto chirped and collected a lot of chakra for the performance. "Sure, here I go," he said. The boy then began, concentrating, aloud, saying, "Ah, K's no Kazu. Just kidding. Bunshin no Jutsu." The blonde felt a surge of chakra aimed at his tenketsu as he released the jutsu. He had enough time to identify Mizuki as the source using Sojin Seishin. "Bastard." Naruto pondered. Then a white, brain-dead clone that screamed, "Kill me," emerged from a puff of smoke. "You fail," exclaimed Iruka, cannon up until the conclusion of Mizuki and Naruto's discussion at the swing. Naruto exclaimed, "Hokage GG," as he shunned his office. "Yes, Naruto, I saw it all," Hiruzen replying solemnly. "What do we do?" Without any other evidence, the council would just take it as favoritism towards the demon child. "If you say that I am the witness since I failed the exam," asked Naruto. The Hokage blew out the smoke after taking another drag from his pipe. "Yeah. Honestly, I apologize, Naruto," the elderly Kage said to the boy who arched an eyebrow. "I did not fully believe you and did not station any Anbu to watch over the proceedings of the exam," the individual admitted. Despite gritting his teeth, Naruto began counting down from 5 as he considered, "Understandable. I will not hold it against you this time," the brunette said. "But what do we do about Mizuki?" "I will give you the scroll as bait, and when he confesses fully he will be apprehended. Just guard it well, Naruto. It is a relic from the Shodai Hokage. First Fire Shadow," replied Hiruzen. With a, "Hi," Naruto said, "Canon until Iruka acknowledges that he is not the fox and that he loves Naruto." He prepared his shuriken and screamed, "Hurry up and die," as he charged Iruka, ready to throw when Naruto teleported to the traitor's side and delivered a jaw-crushing axe kick. "I said I would take care of you first, Iruka, but I changed my mind," Mizuki grinned. Iruka exclaimed, "Naruto," despite being taken aback by the blonde's Hite 8. Naruto snarled at the gray-haired sensei, "Mizuki, by the orders of the 3rd Hokage, as a shinobi of the Hidden Leaf I am placing you under arrest." Iruka was informed of the situation by Mizuki, who smirked and said, "Hey, so I was set up, huh?" He yelled, "No matter, I'll kill you with one shot." Without responding, Naruto teleported straight to his side and hit his nose with a backhand. Mizuki shook as he got up from the ground after skidding to a stop. Even though no hand signals were made and more than 1,000 Narutos surrounded them, Naruto said, "Kill me with one shot Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." Then, all of the Narutos said, "Which one of me?" before they beat the living daylights out of the traitor. Despite his shock, Iruka said, "Naruto, you." Then the boy threw out all but 2 of the clones. As his clones used medical jutsu to heal him, Naruto exclaimed, "Easy sensei. You got hurt pretty bad, stay still." "I guess I didn't know you after all," the man said with a sorrowful smile. Iruka looked at Naruto with wide eyes as he laughed at the last line. "For the most part you were right, just that your info wasn't complete. As for the Kyuubi, I found out about him when I was 5, and before you ask, yes, the Hokage knows. His name is Kurama and is a pretty good guy as long as you don't wake him up early." "I heard that." The fox snarled. Naruto chuckled and said, "Go back to sleep, Ni-san." HMPH. The boy grinned and Iruka grinned back, saying, Sorry about that Iruka-sensei, he just hates it when I'm in danger. All done. Iruka responded, thanks and good job, as the Hokage and his dependable Anbu showed up. Iruka, Naruto, I want to congratulate you for apprehending the traitor Mizuki. Naruto, congratulations on your first successful B-rank mission. Come by tomorrow to deliver the report and get your pay for it. Iruka, will you help him with the report or are you in need of medical care? Asked the Hokage. I feel fine, Hokage-sama. Naruto must have patched me up pretty well. Iruka was beaming. The Hokage laughed, which caused Naruto to flush and Iruka to widen her eyes. Of course. Naruto is actually the most talented and competent medical nin that we have in the village, according to Chief Med Nin Mamoru. His techniques are legendary in the hospital, he said. Speaking of techniques, what was that jutsu that you used to appear next to Mizuki? I couldn't sense any movement. Iruka responded. Oh, I call that Senkaipo, world-piercing step. It works by combining the principles of Yondaimi's Hiraishin and the Kowarimi no Jutsu together with some complex quantum mechanics. I open a subspace gate and switch any portion of space in contact with my chakra with any other portion space I can see or sense depending on how much chakra I use. It doesn't work if I don't know the exact properties of the said space because I need to add a precise amount of chakra. Besides that, it uses as much chakra as an A-rank fire jutsu every time I switch or jump, and will still work even if you don't have that said chakra, but you will get crushed in subspace if you don't have enough energy to keep the tunnel open. I would thus classify it as a kinjutsu for shinobi lower than Junin except myself because of the dangers, the chakra quantity and control needed, besides that it would require nearly 10 years of quantum mechanics study. Naruto said in a lecture-type pose, leaving two stupefied adults since the Anbu had left with Mizuki. I see. The elderly Kage exclaimed. Perspiring, the blonde was discussing Naruto's recent upgrade of the Hiraishin as if he had just completed a math problem and was on to the next. Well, I guess you two have earned some rest, take care. After that, they all left for their homes. The Hokage moved the team announcement day to a week after the exam due to the Mizuki incident. This worked out well for Naruto, who now had time to train after telling his friends about the traitor. Sasuke gave him a playful, envious look because he knew the blonde had already received a B rank in his book. The Hokage summoned his future Junin senseis for team formations the day following the incident. Hiruzen handed each of them a dossier with details about the rookie genin and said, okay, these are the graduates for this year. Now I would like to hear who you would like on your teams. When Sarutobi Asuma stepped forward and said, I would like to train this generation's Ino Shika Cho, the elderly man nodded. Kakashi Hatake continued, not bothering to check the files, and received another nod and a little sigh from the Kage. I am going to train Sasuke Uchiha. Considering my unique asset, I would also like a combat formation. The council appears to have used the Obito guilt card. The Genjutsu mistress Yuhi Kurenai said, I am going to form a tracking team and would like to train Shino Aburame, Kiba Inuzuka, and Hyuga Hinata. However, the Hokage did not approve of her plan. Hiruzen responded, I am afraid that there are complications with that formation. This sparked a brief backroom discussion. I am sure you are aware of Hiyashi and Mikoto's intentions of having their heirs on the same team. As the obstinate woman refused to back down, the elderly man sighed in frustration. Even so, this will be the team I train, she said. Come back tomorrow and you will receive your teams in Kurenai. I will give you my answer then, the Hokage stated. He commanded, dismissed, and they bowed and dispersed. Later that day, Naruto was having a peaceful moment in the Hyuga dojo while two of his clones practiced Fuinjutsu and chakra control. As evidenced by the steady stream of memories he received as each of his clones was destroyed one by one when they miscalculated the amount of chakra required to imprint an explosive formula on a surface, he still needed to practice ninja skills despite having read tens of books on the subject, particularly explosive tags. Instead of always carrying ink and scrolls for even the most complicated seals, Naruto chose to write the formulas using his chakra since it was a battle-ready form of the art and it was really difficult. He was able to conceal his methods because no one ever bothered him while his clones were training in Training Ground 44. Alright, don't combine an activation formula with an amplification array. As he performed his training, which involved standing with his arm raised vertically and in a position just tall enough to accommodate his height, he thought. He performed a one-handed push-up while upside down in a handstand, attached himself to the ceiling with chakra, and used his legs to pull himself into a sitting position. He repeated this process 300 times with each arm, then switched positions, standing normally but performing a similar exercise, but this time the push-ups were replaced with pull-ups and vice versa. Hinata was close to him and practicing some medical techniques that Naruto had previously taught her, but occasionally she would glance at him and blush when she saw his muscular bare chest because he typically trained his physique wearing only his pants and bands. When Naruto noticed these, he would sigh, "All right, even though I enjoy that my girlfriend blushes when she sees my body, I have to stop this before she becomes a fangirl." At that final thought, he shivered, nearly losing his focus and slipping. Isamu bowed to the two as he entered, saying, "Naruto-sama, Hokage-sama has requested your presence." "Thank you, Isamu-san," the blonde replied, dabbing at his perspiration. Hinata staring at him anxiously, he grinned and said to Hinata, "Probably wants to talk about Operation Gardener." Got to give the old man credit, he remembered. Their schemes to apprehend Danzo were dubbed Operation Gardener. After that, Naruto went to his room. Enko needed Miki for interrogation today, so she wasn't present. There, the blonde would occasionally go to gain more knowledge about information gathering. He absorbed everything like a sponge, even though he didn't like the woman's more hands-on style. He preferred Ibiki Oji-san's psychological approach to scarring and shattering his victims, but he was most enamored with Inoichi Yamanaka's, Ino's father, methods. He could infiltrate the opponent's mind and obtain information, but this occasionally left his own mind open and some strong-willed people might even oppose him. Nevertheless, he employed an even more effective method of obtaining secrets by offering agreements, understandings, and pacts, effectively turning into friends with the prisoners and forcing them to divulge their innermost thoughts. Eventually, the blonde was allowed entry to prevent him from infiltrating and placing them in an awkward situation. Rewind. "Alright Gaki, since you are one of us now, I'm going to give you the tour," Anko laughed. In the most polite way he knew would work on the woman, he said, "Okay, though I already know the whole layout by myself now, so can we please skip to the action?" She scolded him, saying, "Impatient ain't ya? Guys like that usually die first." He imitated her grin and said, "Not impatient, excited." Her lips were attractive. "Biwahaha. I like y'all even more, Naruto-kun," she exclaimed. "Okay. Let's go to cell 225. I have a hard nut to crack today." "Hard nut?" asked Naruto. Naruto was in awe of the prisoner as she said, "Yup. This guy took Ibiki's week-long treatment plan and still held it together. This guy held it together for a week, whereas most guys wouldn't make it past the second day." Before heading to her office, she gave the order, "Here we are. Wait here, kid. I need to get some stuff." She turned the corner 5 minutes later holding a simple torture kit. Although Naruto was nowhere to be seen, the cell was located on the opposite side of the 70-foot corridor. Heartbreaking scream and the words, I'll talk. Just keep away from me," came from the cell as she was taking a few steps. When she opened the peeking slide after running all the way to the door in 3 seconds, she discovered that the room was pitch black save for 2 glowing slit orbs that were hovering and approaching the door. Then the cell opened, revealing Naruto dressed in fire capital, his eyes red and slitted, his feral features emphasized. Then, his breathing returned to normal as he inhaled and exhaled. After shutting the door, he turned to face Anko. Naruto smirked as he concluded, "This guy took on Ibiki for a week? Not impressed. Oh well, he's all yours, Oni-san." She blinked quickly in surprise as she asked, "Naruto-kun, what did you do?" "Well, I first entered the room and he started the tough guy, not telling anything, attitude. I then pulled a little bit of Nissan's chakra and well, you could see the change in my eyes. I can see in the dark as well, so I could tell he totally soiled himself. The smell was a clue. 2. I then whispered in his ear that I would do to him what the villager mobs did to me, the nicer part of them. Then I think you heard the result, freakin' coward." Naruto whispered the final sentence. Anko blinked a few more times before exclaiming, "BW ha ha ha. Wait till Ibiki hears that what he couldn't do in a week a kid could do in less than 5 minutes." Naruto simply smiled and reddened slightly. Flashback end. He changed his clothes and took a quick shower before heading to the Hokage. He still kept some of his skills hidden, for the time being, at least, even though he was now a full shinobi, but he decided it was time to unleash some of the big guns. He then activated his Shinsogen and zoomed in on the elderly man after scaling the tallest structure that offered a clear view of the Hokage Tower while his clones completed the paperwork. Hiruzen waited a little impatiently. He was thrilled to have some alone time ever since Naruto introduced him to this technique, but occasionally he would grow bored because 85% of his work involved paperwork. The sudden appearance of Naruto in his office jolted him out of his reverie. Unlike the Hiraishin, the Senkaipo does not emit a flash of light. The boy chirped, "Good morning, Hokage GG, you wanted to see me?" After narrowly avoiding a stroke, The elderly man paused to calm his heart when the old man yelled, "Naruto, please don't do that. I had enough trouble with your dad when I was younger." The boy grinned. "Other than that, good morning. Yes, I did call for you. There are two problems I wish to discuss with you." Naruto's smile soon faded, but he remained silent and nodded. The boy raised a hand to interrupt the man as he was about to ask, "Because of a situation yesterday, I remembered our talk when your grades started dropping, so." Naruto then glanced quickly in the direction of the room's shadows. Hiruzen recognized this and gestured for his Anbu to depart, who vanished in a puff of smoke after making sure the room had no external connections. The boy activated the Keeper of Secrets to indicate that this was a serious situation based on his interactions with the blonde. The man was aware that Tomb of Secrets would be the only place he would have privacy. After saying solemnly, "Okay, we are in the clear now. As I promised, I will tell you everything about Operation Gardener, as we have named it." Naruto then went on to tell the man the entire story, his methods for learning about the coup and saving Mikoto. Additionally, he informed the man that he intended to fire Danzo. The Hokage reprimanded Naruto, adding, "Naruto, those are village affairs. I can't believe that you would stick your nose into them." The boy appeared unconcerned. In response, Naruto said, "And I can't believe you would allow Danzo to order Itachi ni-san to kill the whole clan, children included." Which made Hiruzen uncomfortable. Sarutobi attempted to clarify, saying, "What do you mean?" Danzo suggested it at the council, but Itachi was the one who took that decision. Naruto resumed his more polite tone and received a nod, which caused the boy to sigh. "Is that what the mummy man told you?" he asked. "He really took you for a ride, didn't he?" Hiruzen became anxious and asked, "What do you mean?" "What I mean is that Itachi never had a choice. Well, not a decent one. At least Danzo gave him the options of either murdering his clan to save his little brother Sasuke or to stand with them and be executed and let his clan go extinct. I don't think that this is much of a decision, is it?" Naruto clarified. Now the Hokage was in his contemplative state. Everything made sense. How was it possible for Itachi to kill everyone but his younger brother? The man said, "Naruto is right, he did take me for a ride." "Indeed, but that does not explain your need for involvement, Naruto. That man is dangerous, and this is no matter a genin should handle, no matter how strong you are." The man was back in scolding mode. "I agree, Hokage GG," the brunette admitted to the man. "But I still can't stand to be on the sidelines. I know it is dangerous. But I also took the choice of not getting involved because of Nisan's advice and let the Uchiha children die. I still don't know if I could have done anything, but that is no excuse. There is not a week that goes by without me having nightmares of it, and I don't think it will stop until that guy is brought to justice. So please, let me do it. I give you my word I will not take any stupid risks, but just." Naruto stopped talking. Even more than the cage, anyone could see the pain in his eyes. "But if you do not, I will listen. Danzo is a loyal shinobi of Konoha, but nothing more. He is not loyal to you or its people. To him the end does justify the means, no matter what they are. I know about Root. Did you think that he listened to you after you told him to disband it? I can still see his Anbu, although they aren't wearing the ne on them. Their eyes are the same as always. Even their tactics, your agents are not as subtle or as calculating and cold." Hiruzen was now absorbed in his thoughts. He would be seriously endangering the boy if he accepted his plan. He had the option to handle things himself, but history demonstrated that he was ineffective. Danzo might not anticipate a genin squad, though, and that might be the edge they're aiming for. Furthermore, Naruto and his companions were not your typical genin. The boy did assert that this was a long-term project, and their only shortcoming was experience. The Hokage continued to consider the advantages and disadvantages before acknowledging that Naruto was obstinate and that, despite his declaration that he would not interfere at his command, he wasn't entirely certain that the mummy wouldn't approach the boy later. He could use his experience to coordinate the plan, so it would be better to have him under his supervision. Hiruzen exhaled. "I hope I'm not going to regret this, but, alright Naruto, you have my approval, but I expect periodical oral reports on your progress as well as any significant findings. I also expect you to follow my orders without question regarding Operation Gardener." He was forced to acknowledge that it had a nice vibe to it. Naruto said, "Hi," while standing alertly. "Good, now that brings us to the second part of the problem. I may not be able to secure Hinata in your team," the elderly Kage said with a sly smile. Despite his shock, Naruto said nothing. It appears that Kurenai Yuhi wants to create a tracking squad and wants Hinata to be a part of it. She is adamant and apparently will not take no for an answer. The blonde grimaced after giving it some thought. He said, "Kurenai-san, I know that you care for Hinata like an older sister, but you know that we want to be placed together. Who would be our teammates then?" he asked. Naruto face planted as Hiruzen responded, her team would be composed of Aburame Shino and Kiba Inuzuka. His voice was weak as he asked, and my team? He grinned a little when he said, Sasuke Uchiha, and Sakura Haruno, under the tutelage of Kakashi Hitaki. The boy was now jelly before he recovered and placed his hands on the cage's desk, who seemed mildly amused by his responses. No way. I am not having that fangirl on my team. There is too much at stake here to let that gossip queen in on the plan. Also, there is no way in hell that I am letting that horn dog near Hinata-chan until he gets over puberty or is neutered, Naruto argued. With his eyes closed, the Hokage closed his eyes and said, I'm sorry, Naruto, but what can I do? The civilian council supports Haruno's addition to Sasuke's team. Before Naruto responded, the room was somewhat silent. You're right, Hokage GG, I shouldn't have put you in that spot. He heard, cluck, cluck, and opened his eyes before Hiruzen could respond, but he smiled at the boy for understanding so fast and wanted to calm his anxiety. A white, feathered chicken wearing miniature Hokage attire had appeared to Naruto's right. The kid continued, I thought that this was a military village run by the Niwatori Kage-sama, Chicken Shadow. The display did not impress Sarutobi, and he felt his blood boiling despite being mildly amused. Naruto, stop that. I will not have you disrespect me in my office, he yelled. After using his pinky finger to pick his ear, Naruto went on to address the chicken, saying, you are old and weary, so I guess you can't even handle one civilian council and one Junin. The cage yelled, Naruto, in a much more solemn voice, but Naruto ignored him. Teleporting the cage's hat into his hand and dangling it in front of the chicken, Naruto grinned and said, I guess you're only a step away from handing Danzo the hat, seeing how scared you were of the previous and the fact that he always walks over you and takes innocent children to turn them in mindless killing machines. That was the final straw, and Hiruzen, who now had a large tick mark on his forehead and red eyes, poured out a ton of ki leaping out of his chair. He slammed his hands against his desk. Genin Uzumaki, I will not say it again. I am still the uncontested ruler of this village and its shinobi, including you, and will not allow you to mock the Hokage position. The man let out a scream. The boy trained with Kurama until he was unable to sense the full force of the Biju, and Naruto retorted, then ACT like one. Because the man was still human regardless of how much ki he could produce. This response surprised Hiruzen, but he smiled after a short while. You're right, Naruto. I have been letting them walk all over me, but no more. I am still the Hokage and my words will be respected. Thank you. Naruto said, hi, and then gave the old man's hat back. Besides, I think that Sakura would be much better under Kurenai-san's tutelage. From what I saw in class, she has superb chakra control but very little stamina, so that would make her an excellent genjutsu user. Also, having a woman as a sensei could snap her out of her fangirl tendencies. Having Sasuke on her team would be a distraction for the most part and could even put the team in danger. Hiruzen replied, taking another drag from his pipe, indeed, very well dismissed. Hiraishin returned to the compound after Naruto nodded, but not before putting a covert target seal in the office. With the exception of Asuma, all Junin gathered the following day to identify their teams. After swiftly finishing with teams 1-6 a cannon fodder, the Hokage turned to Kurenai, who was glaring at him, and Kakashi, who was reading his orange book. Kakashi, you will lead Team 7 composed of. The Junin raised a hand as the cage attempted to name the team members. Forgive me, Hokage-sama, but I am only interested if Sasuke is on my team, he replied. Hiruzen sighed and replied, he is. Thank you, Kakashi said, bowing and backing away but staying put. Kurenai, you are the leader of Team 8 composed of Shino Aburame, Kiba Inuzuka and Sakura Haruno. What? Excuse me, Hokage-sama, but I asked for Hinata Hyuga. Her Byakugan would be important for a tracking team. Besides, I do not want her anywhere near that pervert, she argued, pointing to Kakashi. Kurenai, Hinata will be placed on Kakashi's team. She is a better close-quarters fighter than she is at her Byakugan proficiency. Also, having a team that is too specialized can be a detriment to the team's other skills such as combat. Besides, Sakura shows the necessary skills and aptitude to be a superb genjutsu user or medic nin. However, she suffers from a condition the younger generations refer to as fangirl. Sarutobi replied in a way that made everyone cringe, which included Kurenai. The only team that would fit her skills is Kakashi's, but the object of her worship is none other than Uchiha Sasuke-kun, so she could put them in jeopardy. The elderly gentleman attempted to rationalize. Kurenai refused to back down and declared, even so, Hokage-sama, I stand by my choice. Don't say I never tried reason. Hiruzen sighed. However, he transformed into Hokage mode and said, Junin, I must remind you that all decisions I make are for the good of the village and its inhabitants. Besides that, I will also remind you that I am the Hokage and will not have my decisions be questioned by my subordinates like so. Do I make myself clear? As he proceeded to release a significant amount of ki. Every shinobi stepped back and began to perspire. Well? Hi, Kurenai replied, stifling her objections. Very well, you will pick up your teams at the academy next Monday around noon, that is all. Dismissed. A meeting of the administration council was held later that day. Sarutobi said, very well, we need to discuss the tax plan for the following season as well as. I apologize, Hokage-sama, but there is an urgent issue that needs to be resolved, said Councillor Haruno. Oh boy, let's go, Hiruzen replied. Yes, Councillor Haruno? We have learned that the blonde brat has attacked my daughter. I demand justice, she yelled, causing everyone in the room to tremble in agony. Before you demand anything, Counselor, I must ask if you have proof of the crime. The Hokage arched an eyebrow. Of course I do. It was in the middle of the academy hours. He was seen by nearly every student in my daughter's class, she kept yelling. Is that so? Well, Shibi Aburame, the head of the Aburame clan and Shino's father, interrupted Hiruzen as he was responding to the woman. In his cold, emotionless voice, the man began, I apologize for disturbing Hokage-sama, but I must say that I have heard about this incident and… You see, shouted Haruno. Counselor Haruno, please refrain from interrupting in such manner or you will be removed from the board. If you have something to add, please raise your hand or wait to be spoken to. Hiruzen barked. Please continue, Shibi. As I was saying, I have knowledge of the incident from my son who is in the same year as Counselor Haruno's daughter. His version states that it was the girl who first attacked Naruto-kun after he refused to vacate the seat near Uchiha Sasuke, said the individual. I told, Haruno screamed once more, but two swords went to her throat. What? She asked again, but much more softly. I warned you, Haruno-san. I have been recently reminded that Konoha is a military village run by the Hokage, not the council. This is only a tradition that I am indulging at the moment, a tradition that I can interrupt if I would so choose. You will not be warned again. That goes for all of you, he replied to the woman and then turned to the council members. Shibi? I have only one more thing to add. It appears that Naruto-kun even refused the girl in a polite fashion and she was the one who reacted. Hostile logic would conclude that the accused acted in self-defense. Hiruzen replied, I see, and then turned to see Makoto holding up her hand. Yes, Makoto? I would like to second Shibi's claim and to state the fact that my son constantly refused Haruno-san's daughter's advances, finding them, and I quote, extremely annoying. So this would also mean that Naruto-kun helped my son as well. Anything else? Shikaku Nara took the call and said, I also second Shibi's claim, but it's too troublesome to state why except that it is similar to what my son told me. All of the clan heads, including Kiba's mother Sume Inazuka, raised their hands in response to Hiruzen's question. Anyone else second Shibi's words? Seeing this, I declare Uzumaki Naruto innocent on all charges. Haruno protested, but Hokage-sama, until she noticed the Hokage's expression, which threatened to hurt her if she spoke again. Hiruzen commanded, Anbu, remove her from the meeting and silently. Permission to kill granted. The woman was too shocked to object and was ejected from the meeting. I warned her, now to settle the tax matter as well as. Later, the councillors were moved and the meeting was adjourned. At the same time, another meeting was happening in an apartment close to the Konoha slums. So, it looks like the gardener is on his way just as planned, Naruto replied. Hinata went on, it seems so, but who will be the boss? Hinata and Sasuke nodded in interest as Naruto responded. A Junin named Kakashi Hitaki. I snuck inside the old man's office last night and read this guy's file. The duck-ass stepped in and said, well, Kakashi Hitaki, also known as Copy Ninja Kakashi or Sharingan no Kakashi. Naruto went on. A startled Sasuke questioned, Sharingan? Is he a hidden Uchiha that escaped the massacre? No, but let me finish first. As I was saying, Copy Ninja Kakashi, a gifted shinobi who graduated the academy at the age of 5, got promoted to Chunin at 6 and to Junin at 13 years old. He was in the Genin squad under the tutelage of Minato Namikaze, the Yellow Flash of Konoha, before his sensei became Hokage, with his teammates being Uchiha Obito and Rin. Hinata cut in, your dad was his sensei? Naruto replied, so it would seem. Before going on, he is said to have copied over 1,000 jutsu and invented only one, Chidori, 1,000 birds, and a more powerful variation, Reikari, lightning blade, both being Raiden, lightning style, assassination jabs for one-hit kills. He is even said to have cut a lightning bolt in half using the second version. Naruto paused for a moment to examine his teammate's eyes. His father was Tsukumo Hitaki, Konoha's White Fang, Konoha no Shiroikiba, who was said to have surpassed the Sannin in his prime. His father committed honorary suicide after he was vilified by the Land of Fire and its people for abandoning his important mission to save his teammates. Naruto breathed deeply as he took in his friends' faces once more. Sasuke felt a little hot. It was comparable to what had happened to Itachi, who decided to murder his clan for Konoha's sake only to be called a missing nin and a murderer. Hinata, on the other hand, appeared quite depressed and questioned whether this was because the war had made people more heartless. In the middle was Naruto himself. This event made Kakashi think that rules are to be followed and respected no matter what the cost. During the Third Shinobi World War, he and his team was sent out to destroy the Kanabi Bridge near Kusagakure. Having just been promoted to Junin, he was appointed leader of his Chunin teammates by their sensei who had another battle to fight. On their way to the target, they were ambushed by Iwagakure, hidden in the rock, shinobi who managed to capture their female teammate Rin. Obito apparently demanded that they go and save her, but Kakashi, who was still traumatized by his father's death, said that they had a mission and that those who don't follow rules are trash. Obito then left on his own, but not before praising Tsukumo for his decisions and stating that those who abandon their teammates are even worse than trash. Obito's attempt nearly failed, but then Kakashi appeared and a battle took place during which your clansmen, he said turning to Sasuke, awakened his Sharingan. They defeated the Iwa shinobi and nearly rescued Rin, but the I was used a last technique that was supposed to collapse the cave they were in around them and bury them alive. Kakashi had injured his left eye in the previous battle and a rock hit him in his blind spot, knocking him out. Obito then jumped in to help him and pushed him out of the way of another boulder coming in from above, but did not have enough time to evade himself. When Kakashi came to, he was shocked to find Obito on the ground with the right half of his body crushed under the boulder. After a conversation between them, Rin, who was a medic nin, transplanted Obito's Sharingan into Kakashi's left eye socket after your uncle had gifted him with it, saying that, "With it I will see the future through you." Their sensei eventually came to their aid, but Obito was buried deeper after the cave totally collapsed. He obtained the Sharingan in this manner. After reading the report, Naruto sighed, feeling overwhelmed with emotion and now concerned for his teammates. Sasuke was sad but had a proud expression on his face, while Hinata had tears in the corner of her eyes and was about to cry when Naruto pulled her into an embrace. The words, "Obito-san sacrificed his life for his teammates," came out of his mouth barely audible. "I am honored to be a shinobi of the leaf with him as my senpai, senior, because he was a hero." Sasuke. With a hand on the Uchiha boy's shoulder, Naruto uttered those words. "Hey." Sasuke nodded and grinned. "I have nothing helpful to say about Kakashi other than the fact that he is easily among the top 10, if not the top 5, most powerful individuals in Konoha. His chakra-enhanced scent and the fact that he signed the dog summon contract are also the foundations of his tracking abilities. Since we will be meeting the man in a few days, a picture at this time would be pointless. His favorite foods are miso soup with eggplant and salt-broiled sauri, while his least favorite foods are fried or sweet. He enjoys reading, and he detests being photographed without his mask, whatever that means." Naruto went on until he had all the information he needed. "Well, to put it mildly, that was interesting." Sasuke received 2 nods for his argument. "I believe we should go back now and we will meet tomorrow as usual for training until the team placement meeting. Oh, and I forgot to mention that Kakashi-san is notoriously late for everything except the most essential things. By at least 2 to 3 hours. It's even been joked that he will arrive at his own funeral 3 hours late." They parted ways after Naruto removed the privacy seal, with Sasuke going to the Uchiha compound and Naruto and Hinata going to the Hyugas. They are seated at their desks on Monday of the following week, waiting to find out who they were assigned to. The team placements finally took place after Iruka gave a dull introduction to what it means to be a shinobi, and after the team's cannon fodder was completed, it was our heroes' turn. Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto, and Ino Yamanaka. A.N. Just kidding. Hinata Hyuga will make up Team 7. The scarred Chunin read out with Naruto, Sasuke and Hinata high-fiving each other and having the Sasuke fan club scream for blood, but quickly silenced by a rush of ki coming from Team 7 inches. Your Junin sensei will be Kakashi Hitaki. Shino Aburame, Kiba Inuzuka, and Sakura Haruno will make up Team 8. Kurenai Yuhi will be your Junin sensei. What? Sensei? Why am I stuck with Bug Boy and Dog Breath? 2 voices yelled, one of them noticeably louder than the other. I want Sasuke-kun to be my partner. Sakura let out a cry. Stop it, washboard. It's not like Akamaru and I want our team to have a flat-chested air horn. Arf. Man. I wish I had been with Hinata. Kiba grumbled. Fleabag. What did you say? Sakura made a threat. He had the same face as the day that Hanabi first asked Naruto to train her, and when he saw Naruto sitting a few rows ahead of him, dangling 2 plums and slowly waving a kunai around them. Kiba jumped in his seat, but not because he was threatened. Rather, he sensed something much more menacing aimed at him. Remember? Kiba turned blue and sank quietly into his seat. You two, that's enough. The teams were organized by Hokage-sama. Iruka reprimanded the two, saying, if you have an issue, you can complain to him directly. Team 9 is still in use today. Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, and Choji Akamichi will make up Team 10. Asuma Sarutobi will be your sensei. Oh my goodness, I have the human food vacuum cleaner and a lazy bum. As always, Shikamaru whispered. Troublesome, and Ino muttered, at least Sakura isn't any better. Iruka went on, you should return here and wait for your senseis to pick you up after you have an hour for lunch. We're going to dismiss class. After gathering all the teams, Naruto, Sasuke, and Hinata shunshine to Ichiraku's place, where they were met by Ayame right away. Hey everyone. It's been a long time since I saw you, she chirped. Ayame Ne-chan. Hello. Naruto rubbed the back of his head and replied, sorry, we've been busy with the exams. Naruto? How did you fare? She blinked more quickly as she asked. Before it all clicked, Naruto took a few moments to register. Oh, you mean the clothes? He smiled at the girl and replied, well, you know that I was playing around during my academy years, so now I'm back to normal. You look so much better in this than in that jumpsuit, I must say, she said. Yes, I am aware. I discovered that item in one of the store's trash. I must admit that I support the owner's decision to discard it. However, I enjoyed the orange. Everyone in the room rolled their eyes when Naruto chirped the final line. All right, normal. Yes, she replied, not today, please. In roughly 3 hours, we must meet our sensei. That implies that we will choose the light menu today. The blonde replied dismissively, waving his arm. Naruto-kun, Iruka sensei informed us that the lunch break is only an hour, Hinata said, turning to face him. Yes, but keep the details in mind. Remember how infamously late sensei is? The meeting is more significant to him than it is to us, in my opinion. Furthermore, he replied, I can get us there in a flash. Sasuke smirked and Hinata grinned. I left a clone there to let us know if he arrives there early. In response, Ayame grinned and yelled, Dodd, 1 team light please. That will be 1 large fish ramen with tomatoes for Sasuke-kun, 1 medium Mizuki, red bean ramen for Hinata-chan, and 6 extra large miso ramen for Naruto-kun. From behind the curtains, an adult man replied, is Naruto-kun present? Yes. His daughter replied, all right, in 5 minutes the first serving will be ready. Sasuke and Hinata began seasoning their food and then took the first spoonful of the broth before turning to Naruto, who was slowly enjoying his second bowl. They perspired because they could never adjust to the blonde's eating pace. 5 minutes later, the father-daughter pair left with the first 4 bowls. They had a brief conversation about what they expected their sensei to be based on the information, what training they should receive after officially forming their team, and the missions they would be going on. They left the ramen booth and walked slowly to the academy and into the class where he dispelled the clone. Even though 2.5 hours later Naruto still hadn't received any memories from the clone, indicating that Kakashi's sensei hadn't yet arrived. Naruto extracted a scroll from inside and opened a dual-neck guitar that had a variety of seals for power generation and sound amplification. Having made over 1,000 clones for training, Naruto had a lot of free time, so he pursued the finer arts. However, after failing at painting and sculpting, he discovered that he had a good ear for music and a small amount of skill in 2 instruments, including the guitar. He settled into a comfortable position and started playing, first tapping and then selecting Matthew McGee's Fading Away, and Love the Song. As time passed, he switched between many other songs from his repertoire, which not only relieved his teammates' boredom but also had a calming effect on them, who didn't even notice as an hour passed. After a while, he decided to end the show and went inside. Outside, a certain Junin was watching the performance and, in addition to mentally applauding, he pondered whether the genin could perform sound-based genjutsu, and similar to Tayuya. Naruto and his teammates paused their performance to gaze at the man. Unfortunately, sensei, couldn't you have arrived a minute earlier? What a great song! Hinata spoke in a gentle tone while grinning at the man. After giving a quick smile, Kakashi responded, I think you're interesting. 5 minutes from now, meet me on the roof. The genin were already there before him. Naruto was tuning his guitar. Sasuke was brooding, and Hinata was in the center, swinging her legs and grinning at the blonde. I said that and then shunshined away, arriving on the roof into one of the biggest surprises in my life. What time did you arrive here? With one eye clearly wide, the Junin pointed at them and asked. Hinata replied, just before you sensei. All right, so let's give our names. You were the first blondie. He regained his composure and pointed to Naruto. However, sensei, we already know one another, and you haven't even looked through our files? Naruto acted aloud while maintaining a half mask of intelligence. Kakashi was somewhat caught off guard. Yeah, I did, but I still want to hear it from you. He gave a half-hearted eye smile. He lied now, but was it because he wanted to hear us or because he read our files? One more push. Naruto thought to himself. Why don't you go first, sensei? We are completely ignorant of you, but we are aware of each other. All right. Kakashi Hatake is my name. I'm known as Kakashi Sensei, he replied, making the three of them perspire. I don't want to tell you what I like and don't like, my goals for the future. As for my hobbies, I have a lot of hobbies. Need to know basis, huh? That also indicates that he hasn't read our files and isn't that interested in us, so two can play that game. Naruto grinned to himself. You now? Kakashi kept his gaze on Naruto. Gosh. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I enjoy eating ramen and spending time with close friends and family, such as my girlfriend Hinata-chan. The 3 minutes it takes to prepare ramen and salad, people who make snap judgments about others without knowing anything about them, and especially those who attempt to harm people I care about, like my friends and family, are all things I detest. My interests include Jikuukan, space-time, ninjutsu, music, and training. Being the greatest Hokage of all is my dream, he yelled aloud, putting on his Dobi mask completely again while keeping any information that might be used against him confidential. So he is the ramen-loving dead last that I heard about. Kakashi nodded slowly while maintaining an eye smile. Aside from his grades, he is just like you and Kushina, sensei, the man thought. Hinata was a little disappointed that he didn't mention her in his likes, but she chose to comply. His teammates disagreed, saying, I thought that we were supposed to drop our masks after graduating. What are you planning, Naruto? Kakashi, the scarecrow, went on. I see, what about you? He pointed to Hinata and asked. Hyuuga Hinata is my name. I adore, especially Naruto-kun and my family, and I also enjoy cinnamon rolls, and red bean soup, sea crabs, shish shrimp, and haughty pea. People are things I don't like. My hobbies include making medicinal goods, teaching my younger sister Jeijuken, and pressing flowers with her overpracticed stutter, she replied. My dream is to become a great clan head and possibly a future Hokage's wife. Looks like she has confidence problems, but she seemed fine a little while ago. Oh well, Kakashi said. Almost deadpanned, he turned to Sasuke and said, you next, emo. Which made Naruto blush from holding back his laughter and caused the duck-ass boy's eyebrow to twitch. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I hate a lot of things, and I don't particularly like anything. What I have is not a dream, because I will make it a reality. I'm going to restore my clan and kill a certain someone, he responded with expert ease. His sensei thought, an avenger. Well, this was expected. Okay, now that that's settled, meet me tomorrow at Training Ground 3 at 7 o'clock for the Genin test. Here is 3, 2, 1 nothing. Before Naruto started, they all turned to face him. Kaka-sensei, can I ask what kind of test will it be? I was expecting them to protest with the traditional we already took the test, but, meh, Kakashi said, raising his single visible eyebrow. Well, a survival test. Out of the 27 or so genin that made it this year, only around 9 will actually pass, so it has a fail rate of 66%. Also, I would recommend that you skip lunch, that is, if you don't want to puke. Gna. Bye, and then he disappeared. All of the genin sighed together when Naruto held up his hand, palm facing the brunette. Sasuke turned to face the blonde and said, Naruto WH. He stopped, then he flashed a few words that read, not here. In hand sign language. Sasuke nodded, and they started to walk in the direction of Naruto's apartment. As usual, Naruto activated Keeper of Secrets and shut the door and curtains when they arrived. Phew. Alright, folks, I believe we are safe for the time being. This blonde grinned. What exactly was that about? Hinata inquired. Indeed, Naruto. What's up with the masks and everything? Sasuke's eyebrow went up. Thanks for the help. First of all, Naruto grinned, eliciting a smirk and one smile from Hinata. All right, what was it about? Sasuke said. Recall that I asked him if he had looked through our files. At least that's what I concluded. He was lying. Sasuke and Hinata, who were aware of Naruto's capacity to discern even the most deceptive lies, nodded. Then, despite Makoto-san's refusal to elaborate, I recalled the actual genin test that she had told us about. I decided to use the dobi once more for tactical advantage because I thought the element of surprise would be useful, but thanks to your support, we now have 3. Naruto grinned. Sneaky. With Sasuke supporting her with his customary HN, which had grown more ingrained after 3 years of donning a power-hungry maniac mask, Hinata responded with a giggling laugh. Hee hee. What are we going to do tomorrow? Each of us could likely kill him on our own now that we've used this small trick, but that isn't the issue, Naruto started. According to Sasuke, the problem is that we don't know anything about tomorrow's test. I agree, Hinata added. We should concentrate on what we know and make educated guesses about the others. All right, so we know that Kaka-sensei is anticipating 3 regular genin tomorrow, but we have put in a lot of practice and, based on our observations, we are currently nearing the Tokubetsu special Junin level. We should therefore have a distinct advantage tomorrow, Naruto continued. How about the Kakashi-sensei imposed food rule? Hinata inquired. When he began to hear laughter, Naruto responded by crossing his arms and closing his eyes. If I recall correctly, he recommended, rather than imposed. So we should at least eat a light breakfast, and I will bring a seal scroll full of snacks and water, or we will be down on power and, in my case, a little cranky. What's so funny? He asked, a little taken aback. Just a bit. I recall that the last time you had to undergo those academy medical exams, you were not allowed to eat anything during the day. The physicians were afraid of you. Sasuke chuckled. Oh, hurry up. I'm not so horrible. Naruto attempted self-defense. Hokage-sama was terrified of you, too. Hinata laughed. All right, perhaps I am. He rubbed the back of his head and gave a half-hearted laugh before Hinata drew him into a kiss. Yes, but you still have my love. She grinned. He returned her smile with kindness, saying, I love you too. Ahem, should I go take a breather and leave you 2 lovers alone, or are we done? Sasuke grinned. Are you jealous? Naruto returned the smirk. Maybe, was a whisper that Sasuke said, his smirk widening, but it was loud enough for them to hear and feel sorry. Sasuke, don't worry. You will find the one in no time. You are, after all, the last and greatest of the powerful Uchiha. Naruto gave him a shoulder pat. Boosting his ego, the blonde's only response was, HN. Naruto sent a clone ahead of time just in case. As he never slept past 6 in the morning, they concluded their preparations for the following day and agreed to meet at the training ground at 8:30. They did, and it was not surprising that their sensei had not yet arrived when they arrived at training ground 3. After a little stretching, Naruto unwrapped his second musical instrument, a lovely electric violin with a seal array similar to his guitar, and began playing Yoruma's Kiss the Rain on the violin. However, just like in the classroom, there was still plenty of time, so Naruto kept switching songs to keep himself occupied, and after another half hour, Kakashi shunshined in and listened to one of the blonde's improvisations that reminded him of a lovely flower field he had once passed in the land of grass, Kusa no Kuni. A.N. Fan name. Once more, Naruto halted his performance when he sensei approaching. Are you not sensei, kind of late? Naruto gave a shrug. I'm so sorry. Without a trace of shame, he replied, I'm afraid I got lost on the path of life. That sensei was the best excuse you could think of. Really? Asked Sasuke in a repetitive manner. Well, do you not find today's test more interesting? Okay, here's the deal, he said, placing an alarm clock on a stump and removing 2 bells. I have to give you 1 bell by noon, he went on, indicating the 3 close logs buried in the ground, and I will eat lunch in front of you. Whoever doesn't have a bell by the end of the allotted time will be tied to one of the stumps over there. Flashing an eye smile, he looked at them in awe and paused to listen for stomach growls, but he heard none. That's why you advised against eating breakfast. We didn't follow that recommendation, so I'm sorry, sensei. Sasuke responded with his trademark, bad boy, smirk. Although he was taken aback by this, Kakashi smiled beneath his mask and said, okay, I'm sure Sasuke realized my trick and told the others. After all, he is the rookie of the year, but this is definitely unusual. Breakfast won't keep you from being sent back to the academy, though, so whatever the person without a bell by noon will be sent back the following year. Holding onto her shy girl demeanor, Hinata said, but sensei, there are only 2 bells. Yes, the scarecrow replied impassively. Are you ready? That means that one of you will be sent back, so come at me with the will to kill, he asked, and they got into a stance. Begin. They merely stood there when he gave the order. Well, aren't you an interesting bunch, but you will not get a bell like this, he grinned. Sensei, are you referring to these bells? With the bells dangling before him, Naruto asked naively. Using his Junin speed, the scarecrow swiftly retrieved them from the blonde who purposefully offered no resistance, his visible eye bulging as he glanced at the bells and then at his waist where he had previously attached them, only to discover nothing there. As he reattached the bells, Kakashi gave them an eye smile and said, "Yes, these bells. I never said I wouldn't do something to get them back." "Sensengi, what be back?" "You guessed who," with a sigh, Kakashi said, "the bells of course." "Are these bells what you mean?" Naruto dangled them in the same manner while grinning malevolently. Kakashi swallowed and glanced at his waist once more, only to discover that they were gone. Wah! How is that accomplished? I didn't even feel him move when he got them. Hell, I didn't feel any movement at all. He shunshined and retrieved the two musical balls, tying them to his belt with ninja wire this time and adding a small amount of chakra to make them adhere. "All right, what will you do at this point?" He gave them a threatening glance. All of them leapt for safety. He shamed himself for underestimating them, saying, Good, they know how to hide, but what was with Naruto-kun earlier? I guess I should have just read his file. Since the Hokage kept Naruto's Jikuukan abilities top secret, he doubted that he would find anything intriguing about Naruto's abilities in the dossier. Naruto began to plan once he was safely high up in a tree, and then he called forth two small, chicken-sized, four-winged dragons, one blue and one red, who jumped on his shoulders as soon as he signaled them to remain silent. "Naruto-sama, you called us in." The red one mumbled. "Yes, Ikki, you and Nikki must locate Sasuke and Hinata for me. Once you've located them, touch the back of their necks, whisper, and tell them I sent you." After a few hand signals, the blonde whispered his commands, and seal patterns appeared on the dragon's bodies and on his sleeves. Hello. Since they were familiar with their scents, they were able to locate their targets rather quickly after responding, with Ikki being the first to locate Hinata. "Hinata-sama." When the girl saw him approaching with his Byakugan, the red dragon whispered to her. "Ikki-kun." The young dragon replied, "Naruto-sama sent you something and said that when you feel the buzzing, relax." He then flew to Hinata's neck and back, where the seal patterns on him were transferred to her, and a seal resembling the Kyuubi seal appeared on her cervical vertebrae. Sasuke and the seals buzzed into life a few moments later, and they heard Naruto's voice in their heads. Naruto transmitted, "Guys, can you hear me? Just think about the seal and don't talk." "Naruto-kun," was Hinata's response. Sasuke asked inquisitively, "Naruto, how is it that we can hear each other's thoughts?" The boy replied, "I'm working on a telepathy seal project, but it's only been 15 minutes so far. I'll tell you about it later, but now we have to discuss our plan of action." Hinata informed them, "You're right, but what can we do? He won't let us keep the bells." Sasuke remarked, "Then we have to keep him from stopping us from keeping them." Naruto said, hardly audible above a whisper, "I believe that there is more to this test." "What?" inquired both teammates. "Remember what we discussed yesterday? He is expecting mediocre genin, and they are unable to defeat a Junin because of the overwhelming power differential, especially since it's one of the strongest Junin in the village. I see you saw through that as well, since we are not fighting among ourselves. A three-man cell has never existed, and rookies are never sent to the reserves unless there is an imbalance in the graduate class." So Sasuke responded, "Yeah, who does he think we are? Yeah, he's trying to divide us up, so the test isn't about getting bells, it's about teamwork." Hinata went on, "All right, let's come up with a good plan. I suggest we..." Naruto started, and they kept planning until the seals disappeared. Kakashi, meanwhile, was becoming a little restless. He could follow them by scent and knew that, aside from the two blurs he couldn't identify earlier, nothing moved between them. In fact, they remained in the same spot for almost 15 minutes. Not that Kakashi complained, mind you, but as soon as they got into their respective hiding places, he pulled out an orange book, you know what, and began giggling foolishly. But as soon as insects or leaves even came close to the novel, he would either burn them or kill them with a kunai with Junin accuracy. 3 pairs of eyes were watching, and the man was beginning to decide whether he should pursue them or continue reading. There was a rustle in some bushes close to Kakashi a few minutes after the conversation, and the man hardly looked up at the girl who was strolling slowly toward him while looking at the ground and sticking her fingers together. She turned her head away and walked slowly up to the man, saying, "K Kakashi-sensei, I have a question." "Well, I'll respond if I can, but do you believe that this time was worthwhile?" The man let out a sigh. "Well, K Kakashi-sensei, I was just curious as to what would happen if someone said that book was be burned. She pointed to his Ika Ika novel and asked. As lightning bolts rained down and Ki flooded the area, causing birds to fly and insects to die, the skies darkened and Kakashi's visible eye took on a very frightening silvery shine. Then, as quickly as it had started, the scene changed to one of pure paradise, and he responded with an eye smile and said, "That wouldn't be pleasant for the one who did it." I see Hinata turned to face the man, her face out of his line of sight, and said, Have you ever heard of a technique called Hake Rokujian Sho, 8 trigrams 64 palms?" before asking, "One more Q question, sensei." After shouting out the final line, she turned to face her sensei, who had been struck by the first 4 blows before he could escape her reach. As he ducked under a palm strike and then leapt back for distance, he thought, what the hell? I thought that she was a shy girl with confidence problems, but she didn't have a problem attacking me with a lethal technique. I got to, oh shit, here she comes again. However, Hinata noticed this and said, "You're not getting away so easily, sensei." She turned off her bands, which weighed about 375 pounds equivalent, and disappeared, only to strike Kakashi's hand, which was still holding his book, so severely that he was unable to put it away before it went numb and dropped the priceless book. Bookie. Kakashi dramatized, but Hinata retreated. Kakashi was too worried about his precious porn to notice this and even barely registered hearing. Kaden. Gukaku no Jutsu. Quote. To his right, he could see Sasuke preparing to exhale the technique. When Sasuke exhaled a fireball 3 times the size of the Junin think the first grand fireball used against Naruto at the Valley of the End, the man thought, no way. A genin shouldn't have the chakra to perform such a technique, but was quickly dispelled when he executed a quick kawarimi with a log outside of the flames before remembering something crucial. Bookie. No. He gripped the sides of his face in horror as he screamed. This Kakashi-sensei, you mean? Hand over the bells and swear that you won't try to get them back or else. He heard a familiar voice call out to him. He turned to see Naruto holding his bookie, which was covered in explosive tags. The blonde insisted on partially putting his hand into an activation seal. Since Kakashi had years of experience and was a serious Junin, his reaction was appropriate. All right, just don't act hastily. He made an effort to compromise. Now, bells, Naruto commanded, raising his hand even further. Yes, right here, my baby, just give me back. He screamed while throwing the bells to Naruto, who, after checking them for tricks, removed the tags from the book and threw it to Kakashi, who nearly stumbled catching it. Oh baby. Never again should you frighten me like that. He gave the poor creature a hug and said, now, I believe that this calls for a little punishment. He seized the book tightly and shunshined behind Naruto with a tiger seal in his hand after she gave him a menacing laugh. Stop, Kakashi-sensei, you said you would, Hinata shouted. Deception and lies are a shinobi's best weapon, according to ninja rule number 1. He responded quickly, then yelled, Kanahagakure Hiden Taijutsu Ogi, Senin Garashi, 1000 years of death, before striking the blonde with a chakra-enhanced ass poke that sent him flying into the forest as he recovered the bells. He turned to his book and grinned evilly, but when he tried to open it, it poofed into smoke. Wah. You're absolutely correct, sensei. But you forgot that ninja have a lot of rule no. One like don't forget to sharpen your kunai or don't sit in a chair with explosive notes in your pants, back pockets, and don't forget to expect your opponent to see through your lies and yelled Naruto from the opposite side of where Kakashi had sent him. Naruto fell silent as another copy of himself appeared from behind the original, this time with the genuine book and the words, always check for shadow clones and hang shadow clones. At this point, Kakashi became quite anxious. Naruto, look, I'm sorry, okay. Please, don't harm Bookie. The porn junkie was shaking. All right. The original made the activation hand sign and the book exploded into 1,000 burning pieces thanks to a hidden low-power exploding tag. Clone Naruto replied, throwing the book at the man before he could catch it. Paper fragments flew through Kakashi's open arms as he collapsed to his knees, crying bloody tears. Sensei, the first shinobi rule. Never fail to expect recompense. Naruto gave the man a sly smile. As ki that rivaled a biju poured out of Kakashi, who now had a black flame aura surrounding him and eyes like those of a deranged murderer, birds suddenly started to die and grass started to wither. You will pay for, the man screamed as he charged straight at the blonde, but before he could finish, his speed and mental state put him in the same seal that had trapped Makoto on the night of the Uchiha massacre. It takes a very long time to set up, but it's well worth the effort. The blonde grinned. Do you believe I'll be here for a long time? Kakashi became furious. Look around you, but not really. Naruto grinned. After calming down enough to comply with the boy's request, Kakashi discovered Sasuke and Hinata on either side, the girl in a hake stance, and the boy clutching the tiger seal. We'll only inquire once. Give up. The blonde went on. The scarecrow gave a little growl before the three genins' release of ki overpowered him and made it hard for him to breathe. I give up. All of you pass, he replied, his anger wiped away by fear. Naruto released the seal after the three reclaimed their ki, and Kakashi fell to his knees, panting a little, before he questioned, genin shouldn't have such killing intent that could overwhelm a war veteran. How? Well, Kurama ni-san taught us how to resist his, and from there we realized how to project it ourselves, Naruto replied with a grin. Kurama. The man raised an eyebrow, wondering if anyone in the compound had such a monstrous ki. He knew the boy had been adopted into the Hyugas a long time ago, but he had never questioned why. He is known to you as the Kyuubi, and to answer your question, the Hokage is aware I don't want to repeat the story, so ask him for it, Naruto sighed. The Junin responded, oh okay. He rose slowly from the ground, and as soon as he did, a piece of paper flew past his face. He then fell into a depression and began to sob. Sniff Bookie sniff, closing his eye and pointing his face down. Kaka-sensei. Naruto, please leave me alone. Now that you're gone, let me grieve for my loss, he commanded, drawing a roll of the eyes. Oh, Kaka-sensei. Naruto, I thought I told you to. Kakashi erupted in an attempt to shoo the boy away, but he discovered something unexpected. While he was grinning, Naruto showed him a thicker, nicer version of his book with golden rims. The cover was the same, but it now said, Ika Ika Paradise, Extended Limited Edition. On it. A sacrifice for peace, Kaka-sensei. Naruto laughed. Kakashi stared in wonder as the man slowly lifted the book and opened it, causing light to burst from the pages. Where did you get this, Naruto? Since it's so uncommon, I offered my right arm in exchange. There are only ever 50 published, and it's signed. It's edition's first print as well. Naruto grinned broadly. How? Kakashi almost burst into tears. I have references. I have another one, so you can keep this one or we square. Even the blonde tried to shake his sensei's hand, but the sensei grabbed it and drew the boy into an embrace. We certainly are. I'm grateful. When the alarm clock sounded, he released the blonde. Ahem, congrats on passing the test. Before you are dismissed, there are only a few questions left. First of all, when did you realize it was a teamwork test? Of course, from the beginning. You really didn't think anyone would get caught in that kind of situation, did you? Rookie genin are either accepted into 4-man cells or not at all. As is known in the academy, rookie reserves have never existed. It's either in or out for you. Sasuke replied. With a simple eye smile, Kakashi went on, how strong do you guys think you are, and why did you act like that when we first met? We are unable to explain to you why we chose to hide here. Naruto-kun claims that the three of us are Tokubetsu Junin level in terms of strength, lacking only the necessary experience. However, Hinata replied, but Sasuke cut her off. He is more powerful than we are. Most likely at the elite Junin level he could likely wipe the floor with us and go toe-to-toe with the Hokage based solely on strength, which I find annoying, but taking into account all other factors like experience and knowledge, he could likely go toe-to-toe with both of us, Sasuke replied with a smirk. Embarrassed by the attention, Naruto simply rubbed the back of his head. Come on, guys. You're much stronger than I am. And modest too, Hinata laughs. After being stunned, Kakashi regained his composure and said, oh okay, third question, how did you initially take the bells away from me, Naruto? Once more, it is something that cannot be answered here, Naruto stated gravely. Just one clue, Jikuukan ninjutsu, Naruto uttered in a whisper. Jikuukan ninjutsu, like Sensei's Hiraishin, but he's too young, forget it. You know what, nothing they told me would surprise me anymore, thought Kakashi, who now had his only eye as large as a quarter of his face. He was wrong, boy. Okay, we're finished here. Kakashi, eye smiling in anticipation of excitement but discovering gloom, he said, what's wrong? Report tomorrow at 7 o'clock to Training Ground 7 for your first D-rank missions and some training, he inquired. D ranks. They were mentioned to us. We received the brief because Neji Ni-san's teammate, who is a year older than us, is unable to control his alcohol cleaning, painting, or babysitting. Those are tasks, Hinata sobbed. Hinata-chan, please, they can't be that horrible. Half-heartedly, Naruto uttered, right sensei? He inquired, but the man simply whistled off. Oh boy, thought all three genin. Then Naruto sprang into action, saying, anyway, sensei, I have another question. With this test, how many teams did you catch? Surely there couldn't be more than one or two idiots who simply wouldn't comprehend the concept of teamwork. Naruto grinned. With an eye smile and a sigh, Kakashi replied, you are my first team. And so on. What? The three of them shouted together. Yes, that is the situation. Oh well, may I go report to the Hokage, or do you have any more questions? The man went on. First of all, are you really going to be 3 hours late for your own funeral? Sasuke inquired, but everyone understood that his true question was whether Kakashi would be late tomorrow. After giving the brunette a startled look, Kakashi cheered and said, yeah. Before avoiding the spotlight. Inside the Hokage Tower later that day, every Junin sensei provides an update on the state of their teams. Hiruzen gave the order. We will skip teams cannon fodder 1-6 because they failed. Kurenai sighed. Team 8 passed but just barely. Sakura Haruno almost put the entire team in danger. I must admit that I am dissatisfied with her performance after having them follow and record me. Kurenai countered, and the Junin winced. Although it is true that she is very talented in chakra control, she has done nothing to improve on those talents. She has inherited her mother's mouth, so I could tell she is coming a mile away from hearing her complaints about not being in the team with her Sasuke-kun. She wears so much perfume that she could draw a hive of bees from 100 yards away, has been dieting and has almost no physical strength or stamina, and has been caught in AD rank genjutsu that showed Uchiha-kun dying and fainting. Her only characteristic is that she is book smart. She will pass away too soon, so I'm hoping I can help her get over it. She demonstrates promise by acting as bait while her teammates subdued me after Aburame Shino persuaded her with his reasoning, but she is constantly at odds with Kiba Inuzuka, who, due to the genes of his clan and puberty, is now looking for a receptor to discharge his hormones, and believed that I would be one. Everyone in the room cringed even more. He approached me during lunch break, but for some reason retreated when I used my kunai to eat some pickled plums. Report's conclusion. Alright, next, Sarutobi Sr. inquired. Team 10 won. Ino demonstrated her leadership skills and organized the plan, Shikamaru supplied the tactical thinking, and Choji supplied the strength to overcome the obstacle I presented them. The report is over. The old cage said, good that just leaves, but was cut off by a poof, from which Kakashi emerged. I apologize for being late. My genin team and I were stuck playing 20 questions. The scarecrow eye smiled but started sweating when he noticed everyone's glares on him. What? Who are you? Asked Asuma. That excuse sounded plausible. Sweating profusely, Kakashi said, that's because it is the truth. Enough. How is your team doing, Kakashi? Team 7 scored a perfect score. The ninja in the mask chirped. When he finished speaking, he opened one eye to see that everyone was standing guard, with the exception of the Hokage, and some even had kunai ready. What? Kakashi started to perspire once more. That's it. Not you, Kakashi. Things will get nasty if you don't come quietly. Ibiki will discover your identity. Kurenai replied. Enough, I said. Report from Kakashi. Hiruzen gave the order. All right, I thought they were the largest group of misfits the system had ever produced when I finally met them yesterday at the academy. But boy did they take me for a ride. Kakashi started, slouching a little and drawing sympathetic glances from the audience. One seemed to be a cheerful talented musician loudmouth Dobi, one a dark brooding Avenger emo, and one a sheltered shy princess. The Junin went on to make everyone raise their eyebrows, saying, I gave them the bell test, and I have to say that the dead last was the one who got the bells from me twice without me even feeling it. After I recovered and secured them even more, they took cover and stayed in their place, and nothing seemed to circulate between them except two small blurs that I couldn't really identify the smell of. These words raised another set of eyebrows. I was wondering if I should come after them myself, but then they showed up, revealing their true colors. The first person to approach me was the Sokalchi princesses, who was actually a confident young woman who had no trouble going for my vitals and made me drop. Buki, the emo, who supported her with a powerful C-rank Kaden Jutsu followed, and she proved to be a good team player. The loudmouth Dobi was the biggest surprise of all when he finally showed up. Kakashi hesitated. Kakashi-san, please go on. Asuma asked. As I was saying, the Dobi was in fact the de facto leader of the group and actually had the guts to hold Buki as hostage in exchange for the bells, Kakashi gasped. Hiruzen was grinning broadly, saying, and he started receiving lethal looks from the women Junin. I used Senengarashi as punishment, but, as the rumors said, it turned out that both the kidnapper and the hostage were shadow clones, he said, lying about the incident and teaching them that deception is the greatest weapon of a ninja. They took advantage of me quickly. Nevertheless, the real one showed up with another clone, and the talks resumed just when I thought I had won. He killed the bookie in front of me with an explosive tag. I lost my temper and charged at the dobi, but he caught me in a high level fuin that disrupted my chakra and froze my body. Kakashi growled, causing the women to giggle and the men in the room to feel pity for the genin. Did you say fuin, a high level one? Asuma asked. Yes, I did at the very least. It was B rank in any case. His two teammates surrounded me and, in addition to holding me at jutsu point, they even overpowered me with ki, the man acknowledged, somewhat ashamed. You mean that a Junin war veteran with killer intent was overpowered by 3 wet behind the ears genin? Kurenai leapt. Yes, I had to pass them even though it was embarrassing because I seriously underestimated them and they could have killed me at that very moment. I might add that it wouldn't happen again. End of report, Kakashi replied, attempting to preserve some of his dignity. Great job, Kakashi. I'm glad you have a team at last, and I'm sorry for your loss. Hiruzen, a fellow porn enthusiast, lamented receiving sneers and glares of hatred from the women. Don't worry, Hokage-sama. He connected me with a better one, Naruto. Drama Queen Kakashi returns with his new book in hand. The women were furious, and the Hokage gazed at it in wonder as if it were a holy object. Where did you get that, Kakashi? According to Jiraiya, he mailed one to me 3 days ago, but I still have to wait based on the postal service's record. Hiruzen pondered. Kakashi grinned and said, like I said, Hokage-sama, from Naruto, though he wouldn't tell me how. Naruto, Kurenai thought, I'm going to have to visit him tonight. Alright, that's it. Rejected. With the exception of you, Kakashi, the Hokage commanded. I need to talk to you about something in my office. Hello. Following their team celebrations, Naruto and Hinata returned to the Hyuuga compound. They informed Haruko that they had passed and were heading to train. She informed them that a small celebration would be held tonight to congratulate them. They nodded and grinned before departing. Kurenai showed up 10 minutes later. Hello, Haruko, Hiyashi-sama. Kurenai grinned, although her eye was clearly twitching. Hello, Kurenai. Hiyashi gave a nod. Hi, what has brought you here? Haruko replied. I wanted to find Naruto. I need to talk to him about something, Kurenai went on. He is currently training with Hinata in his room after returning from his genin exam. By the way, you are aware that he went by. Haruko chirped. Are you serious? I also have to congratulate them, Hiyashi asserted, getting up from his desk. They eventually arrived at Naruto's room and knocked. Yes, Naruto replied. May we enter, Naruto-kun? Haruko chirped. Yes, it's accessible, the happy blonde replied. Their jaws dropped when they opened the door and saw that Naruto, wearing his training kimono, was sitting on his 2-seat sofa with Hinata under one arm and an orange book with golden edges in the other. The air smelled odd, and on the small coffee table in front of them was a clear bottle filled with a pink liquid that looked like roses, and Hinata was holding a small glass of it. She was wearing a long t-shirt and beige shorts, but otherwise had nothing on. Hiyashi exploded upon realizing the book and the odor. Naruto-kun, tell me why you're holding my daughter while she reads porn and consumes alcohol. He shuddered in rage. Training, naturally. Hinata, on the other hand, had the grace to blush even more because the book and the substance had already taken a toll on her. The blonde smiled back, not really understanding or caring about the situation. Hiyashi yelled, practicing. Before he could finish, Haruko tapped a pressure point on his neck, turning him into a white, frozen mass. I'm going to show you TR. Silence up, my love. Haruko asked politely, but she was also barely controlling herself, and Kurenai was too shocked to respond. Now, Naruto-kun, would you explain what this training is about, because to us it looks more like you are trying to corrupt Hinata. What? We have been going through this since our Hittite, and I believe I promised you that I wouldn't cross the line with Hinata until we are 16 last Tuesday. I requested your permission. Naruto stood up. Rewind. Haruko-san. Naruto stood at the main house's entrance. Because her body was rusty, Haruko was deeply focused on practicing some katas. Yes, dear. I wanted your permission to teach Hinata how to extract bar information because we will be going on infiltration missions in the future as shinobi. Naruto inquired. After delivering a few more blows, Haruko assumed his basic defensive stance. Of course you can, Naruto-kun. I'm grateful. Flashback concludes. Oh no, I suppose I did. Haruko raised a hand to her lips. You didn't recall that kind of thing. Kurenai looked in her direction. As shinobi, they knew that bar information extraction was typically about two things, alcohol and sex, so a good shinobi, especially a kunoichi, was supposed to know how to keep her liquor down while pushing all the right buttons on her target. To a limit, the woman said, sticking out her tongue in a playful manner. I guess I was so into my training that I didn't hear the word bar. Then Haruko turned to Naruto and said, well, since you had permission, I suppose I can't punish you for this, but where did you get these training materials? Well, the book I got from you-know-who. He still owes me big time, by the way. The sweet sake I bought from the store, Naruto clarified. Haruko questioned, you bought sake? How? But Kurenai knew the answer and started. Shinobi special laws: when a person receives his Hitai-8, he is officially recognized by his village as an adult, the woman with red eyes sighed. Article 223 to be more precise. Said Naruto, I won't bore you with the fine print, but it basically says that, if you're old enough to kill, you're old enough to drink. Haruko replied, okay, but what is this training that you are doing? Well, you might have already guessed that I'm immune to alcohol thanks to my Ranpu chakra, so now I'm building Hinata's resistance to the stuff while loosening her mind so she doesn't faint from reading this book to gain some information on how to flirt for infiltration and reconnaissance missions. It won't be good if she can't use her womanly charms to get some drunkard to talk. Hey, she might be more powerful, but she's still Hinata. Naruto clarified. He saluted Hinata with his hand while holding her, not really bothering her. I'm also keeping the stuff from overwhelming and hurting her. I flash my Ranpu chakra into her system every now and then, so she won't pass out and she definitely won't have a hangover tomorrow. Medic Nin's honor, he said. Kurenai pointed to the bottle and the book and said, well, what you say is true about the bar part, but you know I could have taught both of you on the subject without the gears. And how long would that take? Imagine Hinata without alcohol trying to learn a simple pickup line. Naruto laughed. When they used their imaginations, they all saw the same thing. Hinata faintly fainted and glowed red. Kurenai felt a headache rising as Haruko giggled. Sighing, Kurenai said, you have a point. She and Haruko left the room together, with Haruko dragging Hiyashi, who was hardly able to mumble, but honey. Okay, you win, but if you need any help you can come find me and I'll do my best to assist you. Naruto exclaimed, oh, boy, but was taken aback when Hinata kissed him while laughing. Grinning, the blonde went back to the lectures. Many days later, a voice buzzed, team leader here, report. Sasuke here, approaching point A. Hinata here, in position, point C. Naruto here, past point B, requesting permission to engage the target. Team leader again. Naruto, you have a go. At that moment, a figure raised its head from the shadows as Naruto leapt from the trees. With a shout, Naruto said, Tora. Here girl. Then the figure shot toward the blonde's open arms and vanished from view as his teammates and sensei surrounded him. Naruto managed to capture the target a short while later. As he observed the cat purring happily in Naruto's embrace, Sasuke remarked, bowtie on its ear, it's Tora. Mission accomplished team. Time, just over 15 minutes. Let's return and collect our pay, Kakashi grinned. They said, hi, and avoided the Hokage Tower. The mission office is run by Hiruzen, Iruka, and a few other chunin inside the building. Kakashi, that was quick, the elderly man grinned, but he was taken aback. You've beaten the previous record by 3 hours and 47 minutes. The blonde's two teammates gave him back pats as the Cyclops remarked, I have a great team, Hokage-sama. Besides, it took us more to find her than to catch her. She doesn't seem to be hostile towards Naruto-kun, quite the opposite I might add.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.